Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time before alarm clocks, streetlights, or even toothpaste. You're waking up in the middle of a medieval city, maybe somewhere in England or France around the year 1350. The first thing that hits you isn't the sunlight, it's the sound. Bells. So many bells. They crash and echo through the narrow stone alleys like metallic thunder announcing dawn. And you, still half asleep under a rough wool blanket, already know the day won't wait for you. The smell of wood smoke, damp straw, and something suspiciously like rotting cabbage drifts in through the cracks in your shutters. Welcome home. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing that mix of night owls and early risers from every corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake on a straw mattress shared with your siblings. 3 of them, all snoring softly under the same woolen cover. The floor beneath you is packed earth, cold and slightly sticky from last night's spill of ale. Your mother is already up, coaxing a small fire from the ashes while muttering at the smoke that refuses to go up the chimney. Outside, the sound of hooves clattering on stone means the baker's boy is already doing his rounds, cart loaded with dough for the ovens. The air tastes faintly of ash and onion. The scent of humanity is impossible to miss. Sweat, straw, and tallow candles. Even the rich smell like goat after a while. Your home, though small, is typical. A single room, low ceiling, and beams blackened by years of soot. A small crucifix hangs near the door, not so much for prayer as for protection against whatever might crawl in at night. You pull on your tunic, rough spun wool, itchy against your skin. It was your older brother's once, and his before that, which means it fits like a memory more than clothing. Your feet are bare. Shoes are a luxury, save for church or winter. The floor's grit crunches between your toes as you shuffle toward the door. The door creaks open, and the city greets you like an old, slightly drunk friend, loud, crowded, and unpredictable. The street outside is barely wider than 2 carts side by side. Stone walls rise high and close, squeezing the sunlight into thin, golden ribbons that fall unevenly across puddles of yesterday's rain. You step over a small stream of something that's definitely not water, trickling down the gutter's middle. No one seems bothered. Waste management here is mostly gravity and prayer. The morning chorus builds, blacksmith hammers ringing from the next lane, a rooster that apparently missed its cue, and the rhythmic clop of hooves echoing toward the marketplace. Somewhere nearby, a woman shouts prices for onions in a voice that could strip paint. The city smells alive. Yeast from the bakeries, horse dung, tar, smoke, and the faint sweetness of brewing ale. You glance toward the church tower at the square's far end. Its bells are still tolling, 7 times, maybe 8. Historians still argue whether medieval city bells were perfectly timed or just used whenever someone felt holy enough to pull the rope. Either way, they're your alarm clock, calendar, and public announcement system all at once. The richer citizens pay to have their own little bells rung for weddings, funerals, or scandals worth noting. You head toward the well, passing neighbors who nod or grunt without much enthusiasm. Everyone's busy. There's water to draw, bread to bake, animals to feed. A dog darts between your legs chasing a chicken, which somehow ends up in an open doorway where shouting follows. You can't help but grin. City life is messy, unpredictable, and occasionally hilarious. A faint drizzle begins, misting your face. You look up at the sky, barely visible between overhanging rooftops that almost touch above the street. Rainwater drips steadily from gutters carved like dragons. One of them spits directly onto your head. Welcome to medieval weatherproofing. Leak by design. A man pushes past carrying a bucket of human waste, heading for the gutter's edge. He tosses it with a practiced flick, calling out garde à l'eau, a warning that basically means, duck if you want to live. You learn quickly to listen for it, unless you enjoy surprise showers. The city runs on this rhythm of chaos and routine, filth and faith, noise and silence. Somewhere down the street, a minstrel begins to tune a lute, plucking strings that sound slightly out of tune, because everything is slightly out of tune here. He's rehearsing for later, when crowds gather near the market gate. You can already imagine him singing about knights, saints, and the occasional drunken donkey that won't move during a parade. Your stomach growls. Food will come soon, but not yet. First, you have to fetch water, sweep the floor, and hope the rats haven't chewed through the grain sack again. In medieval cities, rats are less pests and more roommates. They have names, personalities, and possibly voting rights. The city's cats don't seem to care much. They're too busy being worshipped, scolded, or fed scraps depending on the day. As you work, the sunlight brightens, revealing details of the street you missed in the dark. A cart loaded with hay creaks by, pulled by two oxen whose expression suggests deep regret about their career choices. A monk hurries past, robe swishing, clutching a parchment sealed with wax. Probably a message for someone important, or maybe just a grocery list written in Latin to feel fancy. Your mother steps outside, hands on hips, calling you back in for breakfast. You hesitate, glancing once more down the narrow lane toward the distant marketplace. You can't see it yet, but you can hear it waking up. Merchants shouting, bells chiming, dogs barking. This is your world, loud, dirty, and alive. You're growing up in the beating heart of history itself, even if it smells suspiciously like fish. As the bells fall silent, the hum of the city takes over. The rhythm is constant. Footsteps, hammers, hooves, laughter, and somewhere beneath it all, the faint, endless sound of people just trying to make it through another day. You take a breath, heavy with wood smoke and hope, and step back inside to start yours. You duck back through the doorway, and the smell of home hits you again, wood smoke, damp straw, and that faint sour tang of fermenting cabbage stew. It's oddly comforting. Your mother's crouched beside the hearth, stirring a pot that's been simmering since yesterday. The smoke clings to everything. The walls, the clothes hanging overhead, even the sleeping dog curled by the fire whose fur smells like burnt bread. There's no chimney, just a hole in the ceiling that sometimes lets out smoke but always lets in rain. You've long stopped coughing from it. Your lungs have adapted, or given up. The room is small enough that you can reach nearly everything from where you stand. One corner holds a straw mattress for your parents, another for you and your siblings, and the space between is the kitchen, living room, and everything else. You can't help but marvel at how efficiently chaos fits into such a tiny space. The family goat sticks its nose through the door, bleeding for scraps. You push it out gently before it decides to add its own aroma to breakfast. Your mother ladles thick porridge into wooden bowls. Barley, maybe oats, whatever's left from last week's market. It's heavy, warm, and tastes like someone whispered the word salt nearby, but never actually used any. Your younger brother picks out a bit of straw, floating in his portion, and shrugs before eating. Waste not, want not. Eat fast. Your mother says, her voice muffled by steam. Your father's already gone to the tannery. You picture him there, knee-deep in foul water, scraping hides while pretending not to notice the stench. The smell of tanned leather never leaves his skin, It follows him home, clings to his hands, even flavors the air when he sleeps. You spoon up the porridge, burning your tongue on the first bite. There's no such thing as leisurely mornings here. Life moves too fast to wait for food to cool. Every clang of a hammer or shout outside is a reminder that you're already late for something. The door creaks open again, letting in a rush of cold air and noise. Your sister bursts in, cheeks pink from running. She's been to the well already, 2 heavy jugs swinging from her hands. The line was long, she gasps. Old Marta dropped her bucket again. Old Marta, the city gossip, drops everything except a good rumor. You help pour the water into a clay jug beside the fire. It's slightly cloudy, but at least it's wet. People in the city have learned to boil water or mix it with ale to be safe. Historians still argue whether that actually helped, or if medieval stomachs just built up terrifying resistance over time. Either way, you drink without complaint. Breakfast fades into chores. You sweep the floor with a broom that's more stick than bristle, then help patch a hole in the wall with straw and mud. Your mother hums a hymn as she works, a tune that feels both hopeful and tired. In a world where tomorrow isn't guaranteed, music is a small rebellion against despair. A knock at the door interrupts her song. It's the neighbor, a tall man with soot on his face and a chicken under his arm. The roof's leaking again, he grumbles, and my wife says it's your smoke making it worse. Your mother smiles politely, which is medieval code for not my problem. The man sighs, mutters something about divine punishment, and leaves. You close the door, shaking your head. Everyone here lives inches from everyone else's noise, smoke, and tempers. Privacy is something only monasteries can afford. You glance at the single window, a narrow slit covered with oiled parchment instead of glass. Light seeps through in pale streaks, illuminating dust motes swirling like tiny ghosts. Outside, the street buzzes louder now, vendors shouting, dogs barking, and the occasional crack of a whip as carts rumble by. Go help at the bakehouse, your mother says, handing you a small cloth bag. Inside is a handful of coins, copper, worn, and precious. Buy a loaf if the price hasn't gone up again. Inflation is a word no one here uses, but everyone feels it. Grain prices dance like the wind, and a bad harvest can turn bread into luxury overnight. You step outside again, pulling your hood tight against the drizzle. The street feels smaller when it's crowded. People move like a tide, carrying baskets, barrels, and gossip. Children chase each other, dodging around carts. Somewhere a pig squeals. Somewhere else, someone laughs. The city's heartbeat is steady, chaotic, and somehow comforting. As you walk, you pass homes similar to yours, timber-framed, crooked, and leaning as if gossiping across the alley. Laundry hangs overhead, flapping like faded flags of survival. A woman beats a rug with surprising violence, muttering curses about fleas. The scent of baking bread wafts through the mist, guiding you like a promise. You reach the bakehouse, a squat stone building with smoke pouring from its chimney. Inside, the heat hits you like a wave. The baker's apprentice is already sweating through his tunic, sliding dough into the massive communal oven. Wait your turn, he grunts, nodding toward a line of townsfolk clutching their own lumps of dough. Most can't afford to bake at home, so everyone rents oven space here, gossip included free of charge. While you wait, you spot something odd, a loaf decorated with a small cross on top. The baker notices your curiosity, keeps the devil from rising before the yeast, he says with a wink. You laugh, though a part of you wonders if he's half serious. Religion and routine are so tangled here, you can't always tell faith from superstition. When your turn comes, you hand over your mother's dough and a coin. The baker presses a wooden stamp onto the loaf before sliding it in. Each family has a mark, so no one steals your bread later. Still, mix-ups happen, and bread theft might just be the city's unofficial sport. While you wait for it to bake, you wander outside. Across the street, a group of boys tosses pebbles at a stray cat. You yell at them to stop, earning only laughs. The cat bolts, knocking over a bucket of dye from the weaver's stall. Blue liquid floods the gutter, staining the stones. "Now look what you've done," the weaver cries, shaking a fist. The boys scatter. You can't help but chuckle. It's pure city theater. Your loaf emerges golden and steaming, the smell so rich you almost forget to breathe. You cradle it like treasure as you make your way home, careful not to drop it in the mud. Passing through the narrow lanes again, you realize how alive the city feels when it wakes. So much movement, so much noise, so much possibility. Back home, your mother takes the bread, tears it in half, and hands you a piece still warm from the oven. "You did well," she says, smiling faintly. Her eyes are tired but kind. For a moment, everything feels right. The fire crackles, the rain softens, and the city hums outside like a giant, breathing creature. Tomorrow will bring new work, new noise, new problems. But for now, there's bread, warmth, and family. You take another bite, savoring the taste of survival baked fresh every day. By the time the bread is gone, the city's already roaring to life. You step outside again, clutching your wooden cup for a bit of morning water, though calling it fresh would be generous. The well at the corner is busy as always. Mothers scolding children, dogs lapping at the runoff, and someone arguing about whose turn it is. The rope creaks as another bucket disappears into the darkness below. When it comes back up, you can smell the iron tang before you even taste it. You drink anyway. Everyone does. Water is a gamble, and you know it. People whisper that sickness hides in it, tiny demons too small to see. Some swear ale is safer, and honestly, they're probably right. Historians still argue whether medieval people drank beer because it was cleaner or because it just made life slightly more tolerable. You suspect it's a bit of both. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and glance down the street. A cart loaded with barrels rattles past, each marked with the brewer's crest, a golden hop vine. The brewer himself, a stout man with arms like barrels, waves as he passes. "Fine morning," he bellows. You wave back, though the drizzle is still coming down and your toes are already muddy. Fine is a relative term. Your mother hands you a small bundle wrapped in cloth, a leftover chunk of bread, a smear of cheese, and half an onion. "For later," she says. You nod, tucking it inside your tunic. "That's lunch sorted." She kisses your forehead, her hands rough from work, and then you're off again into the maze of alleys. The street hums like a living thing. Chickens dart across the cobbles, carts creak, and children dart between adults like minnows. A man selling salt shouts about his prices, while another hawks eels from a basket that definitely smells older than today. You dodge a splash of water, hopefully water, as someone dumps a bucket from a second-story window. The rule is simple. Listen for Gardalo and step aside fast. Sometimes you make it, sometimes not. A little boy runs past barefoot, carrying a loaf almost his size. His tunic's too short, his grin too wide, and you can't help but smile. Bare feet are common here. Shoes are expensive, and besides, mud washes off easier than leather repairs. You glance at your own feet, caked with a thin film of the city, part dust, part mystery. Welcome to medieval skincare. You weave your way toward the market square, where the air thickens with smells. Fish, smoke, onions, and something sweet, maybe honeyed nuts roasting on a brazier. The square itself is a riot of color. Stalls line the edges, awnings sagging with the weight of morning drizzle. Merchants shout prices in accents from all over: Norman, Saxon, Flemish, maybe even Italian. Trade is the city's heartbeat. But before you get lost in the noise, your stomach reminds you it's still morning. You stop at a stall selling small rounds of bread stuffed with mystery fillings. Meat if you're lucky, turnip if you're not. You hand over a coin and take one, biting cautiously. It's hot, greasy, and perfect. What's in it? You ask. The cook grins. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. You laugh through a mouthful, almost choking when you spot a rat scurrying under the next table. No one screams. No one even flinches. Rats are part of city life. They dart between stalls like little brown businessmen, attending to whatever rat errands need doing. In a way, they're as much citizens as anyone else. You sit on a low stone wall, chewing and watching life unfold. Across the square, a barber surgeon is setting up shop. His striped pole spins slowly in the drizzle, marking him as healer, dentist, and occasional torturer, all rolled into one. You can see his tools laid out on the table: razors, scissors, and something that looks disturbingly like pliers. People are already lining up. You shiver a little. A man beside you, old and wrapped in a patched cloak, notices your expression. Had a tooth pulled there last month, he says, showing a gap-toothed grin. Didn't hurt a bit after the second day. You nod politely, try not to imagine what day one felt like. He leans closer. They say he's also good with leeches. Balances your humors. You blink. My what? He chuckles. Hot and cold. Wet and dry. Keeps the soul steady. You're not sure your soul wants to be balanced by blood-sucking worms. But hey, you're not a doctor. The rain eases, leaving the air thick and earthy. Somewhere a bell rings. Again. Bells rule everything. Work hours, curfew, prayer, even gossip. You glance up at the tall church spire, rising above the roofs. Its stones are dark with age, and birds wheel around the top like scraps of ink against the gray sky. You remember your mother saying that bells keep away evil spirits. Others say they just keep people obedient. Historians still argue whether city bells were about faith or control. Either way, they're loud enough to drown out both. A sudden shout draws your attention. Two boys are arguing near a fish stall, something about who stole whose coin. The fishmonger, a burly woman with arms like anchors, solves the problem by smacking them both with a wet trout. Now we're even, she says. You can't help but laugh again. There's a rhythm to all this chaos, a kind of messy harmony. Everyone's moving, shouting, working, but it somehow fits together. The market is the city's heartbeat, and you're one tiny pulse inside it. You finish your bread and toss the last crumb toward a cluster of pigeons. A cat pounces from nowhere, scattering them in a flurry of feathers. The cat's expression says it's been planning that for hours. You think, briefly, about how simple its life must be. No taxes, no guild dues, no sermons about sin. Just birds and naps. You envy it a little. As the clouds part and a thin ray of sunlight filters down, you realize how different the city feels when the light hits just right. The wet stones shimmer, the banners look brighter, and for a moment, the smell of manure fades beneath the scent of baking bread. You take a deep breath, feeling, just for a second, like this chaotic, filthy, vibrant place might be the best city in the world. You glance toward the church again. It's nearly time for Mass, and if you're late, the priest will have words, and possibly a stick, with you. You dust off your tunic, stretch your sore legs, and start walking. Another day in the stone maze has just begun, and somehow you're still standing. The bells echo again, longer this time, deeper, rolling through the streets like thunder with perfect timing to guilt you into piety. You quicken your pace, splashing through puddles as other townsfolk fall in a step beside you, all heading the same way. The air feels heavier near the church square, full of damp wool, incense, and whispered prayers. You pull your hood tighter, not because of the drizzle, but because you're late, and being late for Mass isn't just rude, it's practically an audition for eternal damnation. By the time you reach the church doors, they're already open wide. The scent of beeswax candles greets you first, sweet, heavy, and a little smoky. Inside, the dim light filters through narrow windows of colored glass, painting the stone floor in streaks of ruby and gold. The crowd murmurs softly, every voice blending into a low hum that sounds like the city itself is breathing. You slip into a pew near the back, trying to look invisible. A priest's voice booms from the front, chanting in Latin, a language you don't understand but know by rhythm alone. You mouth along to parts you've heard so many times that they live somewhere between memory and instinct. Dominus vobiscum, he intones. You mumble something vaguely similar, hoping no one notices you said vomit scum. Instead, you glance around. Everyone's here. Your neighbors, your father's guild master, even the baker's apprentice, who somehow still has flour on his nose. Church isn't just a place of prayer. It's the city's social hub. If you skip Mass, people assume you're either dead, heretical, or both. A child cries somewhere up front, setting off a chain reaction of shushing. The priest doesn't pause. He's seen it all. Crying babies, snoring farmers, even one memorable incident involving a goat that wandered in during Lent. You remember that day. It took 3 men to escort the animal out while it bleated through the final hymn. The organ wheezes to life, its pipes groaning like a ship in a storm. The sound fills the space, vibrating in your chest. You can't help but look up at the vaulted ceiling, so high it disappears in a shadow. For a moment, it feels like standing inside the ribs of a sleeping giant. A flash of color catches your eye. The stained glass window depicting St. George slaying a dragon. The dragon looks more like an angry dog, but you admire the craftsmanship anyway. You remember your mother saying the window was donated by the guilds decades ago, back when a single piece of colored glass cost more than a cow. Historians still argue whether that was charity or just good PR. The sermon begins, and you brace yourself. Father Guillaume steps up to the pulpit, his voice carrying like thunder over the pews. "Beware the sin of sloth," he bellows. "The devil finds work for idle hands." You sneak a look at your hands, which are blistered from chores. The devil would have a hard time finding room in those. You listen, or pretend to. The priest rails about moral decay, indulgence, and why young people shouldn't dance after sunset. The irony is rich, considering he once got caught tipsy at a feast, claiming the wine was holy. You suppress a grin. Humor, after all, might be your only salvation. Next to you, an old woman clutches her rosary, eyes closed, whispering prayers faster than you can think. Her lips move like the flicker of a candle flame. You've seen her at the well, always muttering about visions, angels, saints, sometimes her late husband. You wonder if faith makes her brave or just tired in a different way. The air grows thicker as the incense burns, a sweet fog that curls and clings to the arches. You cough once, earning a glare from a nearby merchant's wife who's wearing enough perfume to qualify as a fire hazard. You give her a polite nod, which she returns with the practiced disdain of someone who owns 2 chairs. The priest raises the chalice high, and everyone bows their heads. The Latin chants rise again, echoing off the stone, filling every crevice of the church. You close your eyes. For a moment, the outside world fades. The mud, the noise, the smell of tanneries, and you feel something close to peace. But peace never lasts long here. The church doors creak as a latecomer stumbles in, covered in rain, out of breath, clearly in trouble. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The man bows low to the priest, then whispers something. The priest's expression flickers, annoyance, then concern. There's a fire near the docks, someone whispers. A tavern, maybe more. The priest hesitates, then continues the mass. Fires are common, almost routine, but each one carries the same fear, that it won't stop. You glance toward the doorway, half expecting to see smoke creeping in. Nothing yet. Still, the smell of candle wax suddenly feels sharper, more dangerous. The mass ends with a flurry of movement. People crossing themselves, murmuring farewells, shuffling toward the exit. You linger, partly because the rain's heavier now, partly because you like the quiet after the crowd leaves. The floor glistens with candlelight reflections, and the air feels warmer near the altar. As you step outside, you're greeted by a gray drizzle that soaks through your hood instantly. The bells start again, 3 quick chimes marking the hour. You pull your cloak tighter and start the walk home. The streets are slick, and you can see your reflection ripple in the puddles. Muddy, barefoot, but somehow alive. Halfway home, you pass a group of friars walking in silence, their robes dark with rain. One nods to you. "Peace be with you," he says softly. And with you reply, though what you really mean is, "I'm cold and hungry, but thanks." You glance back once more at the church tower, bells still swaying against the gray sky. You wonder what it's like to live up there, away from the stench and noise, closer to the clouds. Maybe the air's cleaner. Maybe the pigeons are worse. Hard to say. As you round the corner into your alley, the familiar sounds return. Hammering from the blacksmith, shouting from the market, the rhythmic splat of rain against stone. You breathe it in like it's home, because it is. Religion here isn't just belief, it's infrastructure. The bells mark your hours, the priests define your morals, and the church itself watches from above like a parent that never sleeps. Whether you're faithful or just pretending to be, you live under its shadow every day. And as the rain picks up again, you tilt your face toward the sky, open your mouth, and let a few drops hit your tongue. It tastes like iron, smoke, and something eternal, like history itself, still falling. By the time the bells stop echoing, you're back in the narrow lanes where sound bounces between walls like gossip with nowhere else to go. The drizzles turn to mist, soft and steady, beating on your hair and eyelashes. The city smells sharper after rain, fresh earth, wet wood, and somewhere nearby, roasting onions. You're not heading home just yet. Today's supposed to be your day to learn, whatever that means, depending on who you ask. If your family were rich, or even comfortably middle. This would be the hour you'd shuffle off to a schoolroom, parchment in hand, to sit under the scowl of a priest who believes Latin grammar is salvation. You'd trace letters with a quill made from a goose feather, your fingers stained black with ink. You'd learn that words have power, that the Bible and law are written in languages only the educated can unlock. But you're one of the rest, the 90-something% who never learn to read. Your classroom is the street. Still, your mother's friend, a widow named Agnes, sometimes lets you watch her oldest boy copy letters when his tutor comes. You wander that way now, more curiosity than obligation guiding your steps. The tutor, a lean man who smells faintly of candle smoke, is perched at the table, droning on about saints and syntax. You hover in the doorway, try and make sense of the squiggles on the parchment. They look like tiny soldiers marching in rows. The boy scratches out an A, then an M. You mouth the sounds quietly. Am, The tutor notices you and frowns. "Can you read, boy?" he asks. You shake your head. "Then listen," he says, softer now. "Reading isn't for everyone, but listening makes you clever." He points a line of script. "This says, 'Knowledge is the light of the soul.' Remember that." You nod, though you're mostly admiring how his ink-stained fingers move so confidently across the page. Writing feels like magic, turning sound into symbols that can outlive you. When a lesson ends, Agnes gives you a scrap of bread for your trouble and sends you on your way. You wander toward the market again, where a different kind of schooling awaits. Here, learning is loud. A man in a red hood calls out the price of salt fish, his voice carrying over the noise like a herald at a coronation. A woman beside him sells spices from faraway lands. Pepper, cinnamon, maybe saffron if she's lucky. You can't afford any of it, but you learn the prices anyway. Knowing how much things should cost is half the battle in surviving here. You stop at a stall where a boy about your age is measuring cloth. His hands move quick, smooth, precise, each cut clean and certain. You ask if it's hard to learn. He grins. "Only the first 10 years, he says. After that, you stop bleeding." You laugh, and he gestures at his fingers, small scars everywhere. "Scissors bite worse than dogs," he adds. Everywhere you turn, someone's teaching without meaning to. The fishmonger's rhythm as she guts her catch. The mason's whistle matching his hammer strokes. The tanner's apprentice hauling hides with practiced steps to avoid the worst puddles. No one here sits still long enough to call it school, but every movement is a lesson in endurance, precision, and survival. Near the fountain, a street performer draws a small crowd. He's juggling 3 wooden balls, singing a rhyme about the city's mayor, something definitely not approved by the church. He takes your coin, he drinks your ale, he snores through every law and tale. The crowd bursts into laughter, some clapping, some glancing nervously around for guards. You laugh too, though you half expect lightning to strike. The performer catches your eye and winks. "You there, ever seen a real trick?" He reaches behind your ear and pulls out a copper coin that you swear wasn't there before. "Keep it," he says. Lesson 1. Never trust a magician. You pocket the coin anyway. As the crowd disperses, you notice a man in fine robes walking briskly toward the square, a leather pouch at his belt that clinks with every step. A scribe, maybe, or a tax collector. You watch him pause to read a notice nailed to a post, probably a new decree, written in that same mysterious Latin. He frowns, mutters something, and walks on. You stare at the parchment. You can't read it, but you know it matters. Words here always matter. They're the difference between paying a fine and being whipped, between owning your work and losing it. One day, you think, maybe you'll learn more than the rhythm of the marketplace. But for now, you've got other lessons. A bell clangs in the distance, the same dull iron tone that divides morning from afternoon. You head toward the edge of the square, where a group of boys your age are playing Kick the Bladder, a game involving a pig's bladder, questionable rules, and guaranteed bruises. You join in, slipping on the whetstones but laughing too hard to care. The game dissolves when an older man shouts at you to move, his cart's coming through. You scatter like pigeons. He grumbles something about lazy children and God's punishment, but you catch a smile when he thinks you're not looking. Even in this city of rules, small kindnesses sneak through. By midday, your feet ache, your stomach growls, and your head spins from the noise. You duck into a side alley where it's quieter, leaning against the wall to eat your small lunch. The bread's hard now, the cheese sharp, but hunger makes everything taste divine. Across the way, a cat licks its paw with regal disinterest. You toss a crumb. While you eat, a monk passes, his robe hemmed dark with mud. He pauses to bless a beggar slumped near the wall, tracing a cross in the air. Then he moves on, humming softly, a tune that sounds almost familiar. You wonder if he ever gets tired of praying, or if that's like wondering if fish get tired of swimming. As the afternoon sun cuts through the mist, the city changes color. The gray stones turn gold, the puddles glitter, and even the smoke from the tanneries looks softer. You push yourself upright, brushing crumbs from your tunic. You've learned plenty today, not from books, but from noise, motion, and 100 tiny lessons you'll never forget. That's your education, loud, dirty, practical, and strangely beautiful. And as you start the walk home, you whisper that phrase from the tutor again, tasting the words like a secret spell. Knowledge is the light of the soul. It sounds even truer in the dark. By afternoon, the drizzle has faded, leaving the streets glazed with a thin sheen of moisture that mirrors the clouds above. You make your way toward the heart of the city, the marketplace, where the noise builds long before you see it. The closer you get, the more chaotic everything becomes. Wheels rattling, dogs barking, merchants shouting, and the hum of 1,000 deals being struck at once. It's like standing inside a storm made of people. The market square opens before you like a theater stage, filled with actors who don't know they're performing. The stalls crowd close together, each one draped with rough cloths or patched awnings that sag under their own weight. Every scent imaginable drifts through the air. Sweet honey cakes next to barrels of salted herring, leather next to lavender, dung next to incense. It's an orchestra of contradictions. You edge your way between the stalls, clutching your small purse tightly. The golden rule here is simple. What isn't tied down isn't yours for long. A boy darting past accidentally bumps your shoulder. You grab his wrist before he can vanish. He freezes, wide-eyed, a scrap of apple in his other hand. You sigh, release him, and he bolts. You can't blame him. Everyone's trying to eat. The first shout you hear comes from the fishmonger, a woman built like a fortress, sleeves rolled to the elbow, voice sharper than her knife. "Fresh from the river," she cries, slapping a fish on the table for emphasis. The fish doesn't look convinced. "Cheaper than yesterday," she adds. You know that's a lie. Fish never get cheaper after noon. Still, people swarm around her, haggling with the desperation of those who can't afford to pay full price. Next to her, a man sells bread, the air around him golden with the smell of wheat and heat. He offers you a small roll, smiling. "Taste." You shake your head, already full from your earlier meal. "Suit yourself," he says, then calls to the next passerby, voice honeyed. "Only fools eat fish when they could have bread fit for kings." A few stalls down, the leather workers are displaying belts and purses, the air thick with the sharp scent of tanned hide. You pass your father's friend, Osric, hunched over his goods, rubbing oil into the leather with the care of a man polishing treasure. "Ah, young one," he says, squinting up at you. "Your father's a good man. Hard work at the tannery, that smells like sin, pays like penance." You grin. He says it builds character. Osric snorts. Character's just what we tell ourselves when we can't afford clean clothes. As you walk, you spot something bright amid the gray. The spice merchant's table. His jars glimmer like jewels in the dim light, filled with saffron threads, crushed cloves, pepper, and something that looks like red dust. "From the east," he says, seeing your fascination. "Worth more than silver. Touch it, and I'll charge you for the air." You pull your hand back quickly. He laughs, a deep, rich sound. "Smart boy. You'll live long if you keep your hands to yourself." In one corner, a musician strums a lute, his hat upside down for coins. The melody winds through the crowd like smoke, soft, mournful, beautiful. A few people stop to listen, heads tilted. He sings of love and war, of knights who never return, of maidens who wait by windows until their hair turns gray. His voice cracks on the last verse, and the silence that follows is almost reverent. Then someone sneezes, and life rushes back in. You move toward the center of the square, where the smells grow stranger. A man with a cage full of ferrets advertises them as the finest rat catchers in Christendom. You lean closer. One of them blinks at you with sleepy disdain. "Want to hold one?" the man asks. You hesitate, then nod. He hands it over carefully. The animal's body is warm, wiry, and surprisingly soft. It sniffs your sleeve, unimpressed. "They'll clear a kitchen in a night," the man boasts. "Better than cats." Cats get bored. Historians still argue whether ferrets were common pets or just pest control, but right now, you're not thinking about history. You're thinking that if the creature bites, you're never trusting anyone again. It doesn't. You hand it back, smiling despite yourself. A sudden commotion pulls your attention. A fight has broken out near the fruit stall. Two men shouting, one holding a bruised apple like it's evidence in a murder trial. The crowd presses closer, eager for drama. "He weighed it wrong," one cries. "You try to switch my coin," the other retorts. The city watch appears moments later. Two men in mismatched armor, looking equally annoyed and bored. They break it up with minimal enthusiasm. One confiscates the apple and takes a bite. Justice served. The smell of roasting meat drifts in from a nearby stall. Fat sizzling, smoke curling upward. You follow it instinctively. A woman turns a spit over glowing coals, grease popping in the firelight. "Mutton pie?" she asks. You shake your head, though your stomach twists. "Suit yourself," she says. "But you'll regret it come supper time." She's probably right. You pass another row of stalls, candle makers, cobblers, basket weavers, all shouting over each other like competing choirs. A juggler throws flaming torches, earning gasps and scattered applause. A man selling miracle cures loudly insists his tonic can banish gout, melancholy, and mother-in-laws. Historians still argue whether it cured anything. You think with a grin. But amid all the noise, something quieter catches your eye. A beggar sitting at the base of the fountain. His clothes are rags, his hands tremble, and a small wooden bowl rests by his feet. You drop your last copper coin into it. He looks up, his eyes watery but sharp. "God bless you, child," he says. You nod, embarrassed. "And may your roof never leak." It's a strange blessing, but probably the best one you'll get all week. By late afternoon, the market begins to thin. The shouts fade, the fires die down, and the cobbles are littered with scraps, wilted herbs, broken pottery, fish heads. The smell is complex. You step carefully to avoid it all, watching as the merchants pack up their wares. The square feels like a stage after the play's ended. Quiet, empty, waiting for tomorrow's chaos. As you turn toward home, you glance back once more. The sky glows pink and gold behind the rooftops, the last rays catching the church spire. For a moment, the city looks almost peaceful, like a painting. But beneath that beauty lies the same restless energy, the heartbeat that never stops. You walk away smiling, the sounds of the market still echoing in your ears. Laughter, haggling, bells, and somewhere, faintly, the musician's song about nights and waiting. You hum it to yourself, the melody soft and steady, as the city exhales around you. Alive, noisy, and entirely unforgettable. The next morning smells like smoke and sweat long before you open your eyes. The fires burn down to embers. and your mother's already bustling about, muttering at the cracked pot that refuses to boil. "Up," she says, nudging your shoulder. "You're due at the smithy before the bells." You groan, but there's no point protesting. This is the day you start your apprenticeship. You pull on your tunic, still damp from yesterday's rain, and try to smooth your hair, which immediately gives up. Outside, the streets are slick again, a familiar blend of mud and manure. You trudge through it, clutching the small cloth your mother wrapped for you. Inside is a chunk of bread, one onion, and your future, apparently. The blacksmith's workshop sits at the edge of the market district, where the air always carries a metallic tang. As you approach, the clang of hammer on iron fills the lane, steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of industry itself. You step inside cautiously, blinking against the glow of the forge. The heat hits you first, thick, almost alive. Sparks leap from the anvil, scattering like fireflies that haven't learned fear. Master Gerard, the smith, doesn't look up right away. He's built like the forge itself, solid, soot-streaked, and perpetually annoyed at everything but his own work. "You're the tanner's boy?" he asks finally, wiping his brow. You nod. "You learn quick." Another nod. "Good. You'll need to." He gestures to a pile of metal rods. "Sort those by size. The big ones for hinges, the rest for nails." It sounds simple enough until you realize the rods are heavy and all roughly the same color of black and despair. You start sorting anyway. Try not to drop anything on your toes. Apprenticeships here aren't glamorous. They're long, loud, and filled with the kind of labor that leaves your hands calloused before you even earn a single coin. You don't get paid, at least not in money. You get food, a place to sleep, and the vague promise of mastery in 7 years if you don't die first. "Keep your fingers clear," Gerard warns as he hammers a glowing bar. Iron doesn't forgive. A spark lands on your arm, sizzling against your skin. You bite back a yelp. He notices and smirks. "Good. You didn't scream. That's lesson 1. You work through the morning, hauling, sorting, pumping the bellows. The forge roars with life, metal glowing white-hot, before cooling into shapes you barely understand. The rhythm is hypnotic. Clang, hiss, breathe, repeat. You can feel the power in it, the ancient alchemy of turning or into something useful. During a short break, Gerard tosses you a cup of ale, lukewarm, slightly sour, but you drink it gratefully. "This city's built by hands like ours," he says, squinting into the fire. "But no one sings about the smiths, do they?" You shake your head. "They sing about the knights," he continues, "but every sword they carry came from someone who sweated in a room like this." He's right, of course. You think about the ballads you've heard in the market, the glorious heroes, the shining armor, the dragons. None of them ever mention blisters. Outside, the midday bell rings, echoing through the workshop. Gerard sets down his hammer. "Eat," he says. You find a shady spot by the door and unwrap your bread and onion. The bread's gone tough, and the onion's sharp enough to sting your eyes. But it's food, and that's enough. Across the lane, another apprentice about your age, covered in wood shavings, nods at you. "First day?" he asks. You nod. "Mine was last week," he says. "I'm with the carpenter. My hands ache like they've been praying for 3 days." You laugh. "The smith's worse. I can feel my heartbeat in my thumbs." He grins. "Then we're both doomed. After lunch, the real work begins." Gerard hands you a hammer, almost too heavy to lift. "Your turn," he says. You gulp. The iron bar on the anvil glows like sunrise. He guides your hands the first time. 1, 2, 3 swings, and the ring of metal fills your skull. It's harder than it looks. The hammer rebounds. Your arms ache instantly, and the bar seems to mock you by not changing shape at all. Gerard chuckles. You'll get it, or you'll break something trying. By late afternoon, you're drenched in sweat and soot, your muscles trembling. The fire paints everything gold and red, shadows flickering against the walls. You catch sight of yourself in a polished shield hanging nearby, face streaked with ash, hair wild, eyes bright. You look like a creature forged by the city itself. Not bad, Gerard mutters, inspecting your work. A slightly bent nail, but still a nail. Could be worse. He slaps your shoulder, which feels like being hit by an oak beam. Come early tomorrow. We'll see if you can still lift your arms. As you step outside, the cool air feels like mercy. The sky is streaked with violet and orange now, the city shifting into its evening rhythm. You hear the distant chatter of merchants closing up, the clatter of carts on cobbles, the soft whinny of horses. You're exhausted, filthy, and oddly proud. On your way home, you pass a group of boys playing dice in an alley. One calls out, "How's the blacksmith life?" You grin. Hotter than hell, louder than Judgment Day. They laugh, tossing coins. "At least you'll have arms like a knight," one says. "Yeah," you reply, flexing dramatically, if nights smelled like smoke and onions. When you finally reach home, your mother's face lights up despite your appearance. "You survived," she says, handing you a bowl of stew. You grin, too tired to speak. As you eat, you describe the forge, the hammering, the heat. Your siblings listen wide-eyed. For them, it's as magical as any story about dragons. Before bed, you lie awake for a moment, muscles still buzzing, ears still ringing from the forge. You stare at the low ceiling, smoke-stained and cracked, and realize you've joined something ancient. This rhythm of work and craft that builds the bones of the city. Historians still argue whether apprenticeships were fair training or disguised servitude. You're not sure it matters. All you know is that when the hammer meets the iron, for a moment, everything else disappears. It's just you, the fire, and the heartbeat of a world being built one clang at a time. You close your eyes, and somewhere in your dreams, the sparks are still flying. The next day begins with your arms aching like you've been wrestling the church bell itself. You groan, stretch, and immediately regret it. Every muscle protests, and your palms are blistered from the hammer handle. Still, the city doesn't care about sore arms. The bells call again, and work waits whether you're ready or not. Your mother notices your limp as you pull on your tunic. "Hard work," she says, half smiling. That means it's honest. You grin weakly, too tired to argue. She hands you your breakfast, a chunk of bread and something she calls cheese but might be wishful thinking, and you're off into the morning fog. The street feels quieter today. The market's asleep, save for a few vendors setting up early. You pass the baker's stall and breathe in the warm smell of rising dough. The baker's wife nods at you. "Off to the smithy?" she asks. You nod, mouth full of bread. "Don't burn yourself," she says. "We need our nails straight, not our boys bent." By the time you reach the workshop, Master Gerard's already working, hammering with the precision of a man whose muscles remember what his mind no longer needs to think about. He glances at you. You're late. You're not, but it's easier to nod than argue. "Grab the tongs," he says. "We've got horseshoes to finish before noon." You settle into the rhythm again. Bellows, hammer, sparks, repeat. The sound fills your skull until it's all you can hear. There's something almost holy about it, though Gerard would laugh if you said that. Every strike is both violence and creation. Around midday, he waves you off. "Go eat before you faint," he says. You take the hint gladly, stepping out into the alley for air. You unwrap your lunch, a bit of yesterday's bread and onion, and lean against the wall. A couple of other apprentices pass by, one from the cooper's workshop, another from the tailor's. "You the smith's new boy?" one asks. "You not. Good luck," he says, grinning. "My cousin lasted 3 days before he mistook his finger for iron." You laugh, wincing at the memory of your own near misses. You finish eating quickly, dust off your tunic, and wander toward the square for a few minutes before heading back. The market's smaller today, just a few stalls open for midday trade. The fishmonger's still there, calling out her wares with the same enthusiasm as ever. You wave. She tosses you a small salted sardine. "You look starved," she says. You grin, accepting the gift. Nearby, a boy juggles apples for tips, his bare feet slapping against the wet stone. You toss him the sardine. He catches it midair, laughs, and bows dramatically. "A fine trade," he declares. "A fish for a show." You clap as he balances the apple on his nose. The small absurdities of the city are what keep it human. A sweet smell catches your attention. Fresh pies cooling on a wooden tray outside an alehouse. The baker's daughter, a girl about your age with ash on her cheeks, is dusting them with sugar. "Don't even think about it," she says without looking up. "I wasn't," you lie. She finally looks at you, smiling slightly. "You're the new smith's apprentice, right? My father says you sound like thunder when you work." "That's probably the hammer," you say, "or me dropping it." She laughs softly. "You'll get better. They always do." There's warmth in her tone, a friendliness that makes you forget, just for a moment, how heavy the world feels. Then her father calls from inside, and she disappears. You linger a second too long before heading back to the forge, your grin refusing to fade. Afternoon brings a new challenge. Making nails. It sounds simple. It isn't. Each one must be identical, and Gerard's patience has limits. "No curves," he says, inspecting your work. A bent nail ruins a door. You hold up your 5th attempt, which looks more like a question mark than hardware. "That one's a philosopher," Gerard says dryly. You laugh despite yourself. By the end of the day, your hands are black with soot, your nails rimmed with iron dust. You're sore, filthy, and completely alive. There's a strange pride in seeing something tangible, a pile of nails that you made, however imperfect. As the forge cools and the last light fades, Gerard tosses you a small scrap of metal shaped like a coin. "For luck," he says. "Made it myself, years ago." You look at it. Rough, uneven, but clearly deliberate. "What's it for?" you ask. "To remind you that even ugly things can hold worth," he replies. You pocket it carefully. On your way home, the city glows under lanterns, soft, flickering lights reflecting in puddles. The streets feel calmer now, the chaos replaced by a sort of sleepy murmur. You pass a group of men drinking outside an inn, laughing too loudly. One strums a lute, singing a bawdy tune about a miller's daughter that probably shouldn't exist within 100 yards of a church. You laugh quietly to yourself and keep walking. As you turn down a side alley, you spot something strange. A man crouched near a doorway, sketching with chalk on the wall. You slow down, curious. The drawing's crude but recognizable. A horse mid-gallop, muscles tense, mane wild. "You an artist?" you ask. The man glances up, his beard streaked with gray. "Once," he says. "Now I paint for tavern signs and drunkards." He gestures at the wall. "But sometimes I draw for me." You watch the horse take shape, its outline soft under the fading light. "It looks alive," you say quietly. He nods. "Everything here's alive, even the stones. You just have to look long enough." You want to ask more, but he waves you off gently. "Go home, boy. This city will still be here tomorrow." You walk away, the image of that chalk horse burned into your mind. It feels like a secret the city shared just with you. Back home, your mother's stirring a pot of stew, humming softly. Your siblings are already half asleep in their corner, their faces smudged with the day's adventures. You eat quietly, listening to the crackle of the fire and the muffled laughter of neighbors through the wall. When you finally lie down, you take the little metal coin from your pocket, turning it over in your palm. It's rough and uneven, edges sharp in places. You smile. It feels real, honest, like the city itself. Outside, the last bells of the night begin to toll, echoing across the rooftops. The sound is deep and steady, carrying through the darkness like a promise that tomorrow will come, ready or not. You close your eyes, your body aching but your heart strangely light. Historians still argue whether apprentices were happy or simply too tired to complain. You think maybe it's both, because tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you can almost taste the fire on your breath, and it tastes a little like pride. You wake the next morning to the sound of trumpets echoing faintly across the rooftops. Not the church bells this time. These are sharper, prouder, rolling through the streets like an announcement that something worth waking up for is happening. Your mother's already peering through the narrow window slit, squinting into the light. Guild Day, she says. Best get ready if you want to see the parade. Guild Day. You've heard about it, of course. How the city's craftsmen march through the streets behind banners of every color, showing off their trade with enough pomp to make the mayor jealous. For one morning, even the lowest apprentice gets to pretend he's part of something bigger than himself. You splash your face with cold water, throw on your tunic, cleanish, and hurry out the door. The air hums with excitement. People pour into the streets, jostling for a good view. Children climb onto barrels and window ledges. Vendors appear from nowhere, shouting about honey cakes, roasted nuts, and cider. The whole city feels awake in a way it rarely does. You squeeze into the crowd as the parade begins. First come the masons, walking proudly behind a banner painted with hammers and towers. Their hands are white with lime dust, their expression solemn. Behind them, the carpenters march, holding miniature wooden models of roofs and doors. Someone in the crowd shouts, "Mind the leaks next time," and laughter ripples through the street. Then comes your master's guild, the blacksmiths. You spot Gerard near the front, his beard freshly combed, a rarity, and his apron polished to something almost resembling respectability. The apprentices march behind him, carrying small ironworks as examples of their craft. Horseshoes, hinges, nails, even a small sword. You don't see your name among them yet, but you clap anyway, pride swelling in your chest. The guild banners are magnificent, deep reds and golds, embroidered with symbols of trade and power. The weaver's flag ripples like silk water. The baker's banner shows a loaf so perfectly painted you can almost smell it. You notice one banner that makes you grin, a painting of a fish in armor, spear and fin, clearly made by someone with more enthusiasm than talent. That's the fishmongers, a woman beside you whispers. They paid the painter in herring. Historians still argue whether guild days were meant to honor hard work or distract from high taxes. But standing here, you don't care. The city feels united. No lords, no peasants, just noise, color, and pride. As the parade moves on, the air fills with music, drums, flutes, bagpipes that sound like geese arguing. Dancers weave between the guild members, tossing flower petals and laughing. You spot the baker's daughter again, carrying a tray of small pies for the spectators. She catches your eye, smirks, and throws one directly at you. You fumble the catch, but it lands intact. You bow dramatically. She rolls her eyes, but smiles before disappearing back into the crowd. The parade stops in the main square where a wooden platform's been built. The mayor, dressed in robes far too bright for his complexion, steps up and clears his throat. "Good people of the city," he begins, his voice pompous and nasal. "We celebrate today the noble work of our guilds, the foundation upon which our prosperity rests." Someone mutters, "And your taxes too," earning a few chuckles. The mayor glares but continues, launching into a speech about unity, industry, and divine favor. You stop listening halfway through, distracted by a juggler nearby balancing a hammer and 2 apples. After the speech, the mayor lifts a large golden key, the symbolic key to the city. It glints in the sunlight as he waves it toward the crowd. "To the workers," he declares. Everyone cheers. For a moment, even cynics like Gerard clap along. Then the real fun begins. The guild feasts. Tables appear as if by magic, laden with bread, cheese, roasted meat, and jugs of ale. You hover near the blacksmith section, hoping Gerard might wave you over. He notices, smirks, and jerks his head toward a bench. "Apprentices eat too," he says, "if they've still got teeth." You sit, wide-eyed, as platters of food pass around. You grab a hunk of bread and a slice of salted pork. It's greasy, salty, perfect. Someone hands you a cup of ale that tastes like smoke and victory. The blacksmiths sing between bites, raucous, off-key, and full of laughter. One starts a joke about a tanner, a priest, and a goat. And by the punchline, half the table is choking on laughter. A man from another guild, the Coopers, judging by the smell of wine barrels, leans over. "How many nails to make a barrel?" he shouts. "None," Gerard replies, grinning. "Because your barrels leak like your mouth." The whole section erupts again. You laugh until your sides ache. In between songs and insults, someone starts talking about guild secrets, the special methods each trade guards like treasure. "Every guild's got them," Gerard says. "A recipe, a measurement, a trick passed only from master to apprentice. That's how we keep the nobles from stealing our craft." He winks. "So don't go blabbing about how we quench the iron." You nod solemnly, though you're still not sure what quenching actually is. The sun dips low as the feasting winds down. The tables are littered with crumbs, the ale nearly gone, and someone's singing has devolved into enthusiastic mumbling. You slip away from the crowd, wandering to the edge of the square where musicians are still playing for the stragglers. You sit on the fountain's rim, watching the water ripple. The city feels softer now, bathed in golden light, the air buzzing with laughter and the smell of roasted meat. For a moment, you forget about the blisters on your hands and the ache in your shoulders. You're part of something vast, a rhythm of labor, pride, and shared stories. An old man beside you raises his mug. "To the guilds," he says, "to the hands that build what others take for granted." You raise your imaginary cup in return. "To the hands," you echo. As the music fades and the lanterns flicker to life, you make your way home through streets still echoing with song. The flags flutter overhead, and your feet trace their way through petals scattered like confetti. Historians will one day write about guilds as rigid systems of control, monopolies of power. Maybe they were. But tonight, walking through the glowing maze of your city, you can't help but think they're also something else. Proof that even in a world ruled by kings and priests, the workers still have their day to shine. You fall asleep that night with your ears still full of laughter, your stomach full of food, and your dreams full of banners waving proudly in the wind. You wake the next morning to the low, throaty sound of a horn echoing through the streets. Not the bright clang of bells or the pomp of trumpets this time. This sound is slower, darker, more official. You push aside the blanket and peer through the window slit. Down the street, Two men in mismatched armor are marching past with torches in hand, their boots splashing through the puddles. The town watch. They look more tired than terrifying. One's yawning, the other's scratching under his helmet. Still, everyone give them space. The watch doesn't need much reason to rough someone up if they're in a bad mood. Your mother mutters something about lazy drunkards in tin suits as she stirs the morning porridge. The watch has been busier lately. Rumors of thieves, fires, and night prowlers drift through the city like smoke. You've seen the stocks in the main square, wooden boards stained with rain and shame, where offenders are locked up for everyone to mock. Last week, it was a baker's boycott skimming flour. Yesterday, a drunk who forgot to stop singing after curfew. Justice here doesn't have much patience for nuance. You eat your breakfast quickly and head out. The streets feel different today, quieter, tense. People move faster, heads down. Maybe it's the rumor going around that a thief broke into a merchant's house last night and made off with half a chest of silver buttons. The devil's work, someone at the well says. We're just clever fingers, another replies. When you reach the square, the stocks are occupied again. A thin man in a torn tunic stands locked in place, arms and head trapped between the wooden boards. A crowd's gathered, some throwing old bread, others just watching. A woman spits. "Thief," she shouts. The man says nothing, his face pale with humiliation. You feel a flicker of pity, though you keep it hidden. Sympathy here is contagious, and not in a good way. A guard nearby notices you staring. First time seeing justice served, boy, he asks, leaning on his halberd. You shrug. Looks heavy, you say. He chuckles. It's lighter than a gallows. Be grateful he's not swinging. He lifts his cup and takes a sip. You're pretty sure it's not water. Historians still argue whether medieval punishments were meant to deter crime or simply entertain the crowd. Standing here, watching people laugh while the man in the stock shivers in the cold, you suspect it's both. You turn away, feeling uneasy. The city's full of rules, but it's the kind of order held together by noise and fear rather than fairness. Curfew bells, market laws, guild dues. Every sound seems to remind you who's in charge. As you walk, a shout erupts from the next street over. You turn the corner just in time to see two guards chasing a boy, barefoot, wild-eyed, clutching something shiny in his hand. He darts between carts, leaps over a puddle, disappears down an alley. One guard slips and lands flat in the mud. The crowd roars with laughter, cheering the thief like he's some kind of folk hero. You catch a glimpse of the boy's face. He can't be more than 12. You recognize him from the marketplace. The same kid who tried to pick your pocket last week. For a heartbeat, your eyes meet. He grins before vanishing into the maze of streets. You can't help it. You laugh, shaking your head. The city may be full of laws, but it's also full of loopholes. By afternoon, things calm down. You head toward the forge, but Gerard's busy with a commission, so you're free until sunset. You wander through the quieter lanes near the walls, where the richer houses stand, 2 stories high, with painted shutters and guards at the gates. You catch sight of one man wearing a velvet doublet, his hands adorned with rings. He's shouting at a servant over a spilled drink. The servant bows so low you wonder if he'll ever straighten again. The contrast between the streets and the stone houses feels sharper today. The city may all share the same walls, but not the same world. Turning back toward the center, you spot something curious. A small wooden sign outside an alehouse painted with the words "The Silver Boar." The carving underneath shows a pig with a sword in its mouth. You've passed it before, but never gone in. The door's open now, the smell of roast meat and spilled ale drifting out like a warm invitation. Inside, it's dim and noisy. Men crowd around wooden tables. mugs slamming in rhythm with a fiddler tune. A barmaid weaves between them with impossible grace, balancing 3 tankards at once. You slide onto a bench near the wall, watching quietly. At the next table, 2 guards are deep in conversation, their armor dulled with grime. You hear about the thief, one says. The other grunts. Which one? There's always a thief. The one from the merchant's house, the first replies. Slipped right past the watch. Like a ghost. The other laughs. If ghosts can pick locks and climb drain pipes, then sure. Their mugs clink, and you catch the faint sound of coins exchanging hands beneath the table. The watchmen here aren't exactly incorruptible. You file that away. Just another fact of city life. Justice is negotiable. Outside again, the sun's beginning to fade. The curfew bell will ring soon. The sound that means shutters close, doors bolt, and the watch prowls the streets looking for stragglers. You quicken your pace, heading home through the winding alleys. But then you see him again, the boy thief, crouched by a wall, counting his loot. You stop. He looks up, startled, ready to run. You shake your head. Don't worry, you say softly. I'm not telling. His shoulders relax. He grins, flashing the same wild confidence as before. You should try it sometime, he says. Stealing, you ask. No, he replies, running. He darts off before you can respond, vanishing like smoke into the dusk. You stand there a moment, thinking about his words. In this city, maybe survival and sin aren't as far apart as everyone pretends. The curfew bell tolls, long, heavy notes that roll across the rooftops. You hurry home, slipping through the narrow door just as the last echo fades. Your mother locks the bolt, sighing with relief. Outside, the streets fall silent except for the distant footsteps of the watch. Lying in bed, you think about the thief, the guards, the man in the stocks, and the golden houses you'll never live in. The city feels different now, not just alive, but alert, watching itself. Somewhere far off, a drunk shouts a song before being silenced by the watch. You close your eyes, wondering whether tomorrow's peace will hold, or whether it's just the quiet before the next chase. Because in this city, justice never really sleeps. It just takes turns being awake. By the time dawn rolls over the rooftops again, the air feels heavier. The usual morning clatter, the bells, the carts, the gossip, seems dulled somehow, wrapped in a layer of unease. You can't quite place why at first, until you step outside and hear the whispers. People are speaking in low voices, glancing toward one another, not making eye contact for long. Then you catch a word that freezes the air in your lungs. Plague. You've heard the word before, of course. Everyone has. It's the monster adults whisper about after dark. The sickness that emptied entire towns decades ago, carried by bad air, sin, or maybe just bad luck. Nobody agrees on what brings it, but everyone agrees on what it does. You keep walking, pretending you didn't hear. But the whispers follow you down the lane. At the well, women murmur that a beggar near the river died overnight. Black spots on his neck, his body taken away before sunrise. Others claim it's nonsense, that he just drank bad ale. Superstitious rubbish, one says. If there was plague, the priests would have said so. That sentence sounds like comfort, but it isn't. You continue toward the market, but the streets feel different, emptier, maybe, or just cautious. Even the dogs seem subdued. A cart rolls past carrying sacks that don't quite move like grain. You don't ask. By the time you reach the square, you can see the tension clearly. Merchants have pulled their stalls farther apart. Buyers keep their distance, and the air smells faintly of smoke and herbs. A man waves a bundle of rosemary under his nose as he walks, muttering that it keeps the foul humors away. Another woman sprinkles vinegar on her doorstep. Someone's burning juniper branches nearby, the fragrant smoke curling into the air like a warding spell. Historians still argue whether people believed more in medicine or miracles. Judging by the crowd here, you'd say both. You find Gerard at the forge, hammering harder than usual. The fire roars, sparks bursting like tiny stars. He doesn't look up when you enter. "You heard the talk?" he asks finally. You nod. "It's nonsense," he says too quickly. "People die every day. Doesn't mean the city's cursed." You don't argue, but you notice the rosemary sprig hanging discreetly over the forge door. Work feels slower today. The air tastes of fear and iron. Every cough makes someone glance sideways. A woman passes outside, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. You notice a small hand slipping out before she tucks it back in. You look away, heart pounding. By midday, the church bells toll. Not the usual rhythmic call to prayer, but a long, mournful ringing that carries through the whole city. One toll for the dead, then another, and another. You stop counting after 5. "Go home early," Gerard says finally. "Your mother will worry." You hesitate. "What about you?" He shrugs. The forge doesn't catch the plague, but his hands tremble slightly as he picks up the tongs. The streets on your way home look strange in the late light. A man wearing a beaked mask walks past. A plague doctor, they call him, though he looks more like a vulture in robes. He carries a long stick to prod the sick from a distance. The mask's beak is stuffed with herbs, meant to purify the air. You can smell it even after he's gone. Sweet, acrid, unforgettable. Children watch from doorways, their laughter subdued. A priest follows behind, murmuring prayers over doorways marked with chalk crosses. One of the crosses is just 3 doors down from your own street. You swallow hard. When you reach home, your mother's already shut the shutters tight. The air inside is thick with smoke and rosemary. "You stay in," she says, eyes wide. "Don't touch anyone. Don't drink from the well. We'll boil our water. And no market for a few days." You nod, though you know a few days can stretch into weeks. Dinner is quiet. No one speaks much. Your younger sister asks if the plague is a monster. "No," your mother says, too softly. "It's smaller than monsters. That's why it's worse." Afterward, you lie awake listening to the sounds outside. The city's never silent, but tonight the noises feel thinner, further away. The bark of a dog, the rumble of a cart, the faint echo of a prayer. Then, somewhere close, a scream. Short, cut off quickly. You freeze, holding your breath until your mother's hand finds your shoulder. "Just pray," she whispers. Over the next days, the city changes. The market empties. The tavern's close. The bells ring almost constantly now. The air smells of smoke and vinegar as people burn herbs and clothes. You pass a group of men hauling a cart covered in sheets, the edges dark with stains. "Bring out your dead." One calls, his voice flat. The phrase lands like a hammer blow in the air. You turn down another street and see a man painting a red mark on a door. You don't ask what it means. You already know. Even the church feels different. The priests walk faster, eyes hollow. Services are shorter, prayers longer. Some say sin brought this on, others blame the stars. No one blames the rats, though they're everywhere now, bold and fat from all the grain stores left unguarded. One morning, you wake to find your mother coughing. "Just a little," she says, waving it off. "The smoke," she insists, but you see the fear in her eyes. You fetch water, stoke the fire, anything to stay busy. That night, as you lie awake again, you think about how fragile the city feels now. The same streets that roared with laughter during Guild Day now whisper like a funeral procession. Even the watches stop patrolling. What's the point? when the enemy is invisible. And yet, life doesn't stop. Babies still cry. Bread still bakes. The bells still ring. You realize, in some strange way, that the city is learning to live with its own fear. Historians will one day write about these outbreaks in numbers. How many died? How many survived? But none of those numbers will capture this. The way silence itself can feel like a living thing, pressing against your ribs, daring you to breathe. You roll onto your side, watching the faint flicker of firelight on the wall. Somewhere outside, a single bell rings again, long and low. It sounds like the city's heartbeat slowing down, but not stopping. Not yet. Weeks slip by like slow-moving fog, and somehow the city doesn't die. It just changes shape. The plague still whispers through alleys, but the tolling bells come less often now. Smoke drifts above the rooftops again, not from funeral pyres, but from kitchens. People start leaving their houses a little earlier each day, testing the air as if it might have forgiven them. When the first real laughter returns, it feels almost foreign. You hear it from the marketplace one morning. Nervous, cracked, but unmistakably laughter. You follow the sound and find the stalls reopening, the colors returning to the streets like the world's been painted again. There's a festival coming up. Someone says, a feast day for St. Martin, patron of the poor. The city needs joy like lungs need air, and it's been starving. The mayor decrees that the celebration will go on, to give thanks for deliverance. Most people just hear, an excuse to drink. By afternoon, banners start appearing again. Bright scraps of cloth stretch between windows, ribbons tied to poles, even flowers laid in gutters to sweeten the smell of life. You can't help but smile. The city feels like it's remembering itself. You've barely stepped into the square when you're hit by sound. Drums, laughter, singing so out of tune it loops back to perfection. Jugglers toss knives, children chase each other with sticks, and vendors shout promises of fresh bread, fine wine, and meat pies with actual meat. The air smells alive again. Yeast, spice, sweat, and hope. You spot the baker's daughter among the crowd, handing out little honey cakes shaped like doves. Peace offerings, she calls them. 3 for a penny. When she sees you, she grins. I thought you might have died. You smirk. Almost. But death got bored waiting. She laughs, shaking her head. Still making jokes, I see. That's a good sign. A fiddler starts playing nearby, his bow moving so fast it blurs. People clap along, forming a circle that grows wider and wilder with each verse. A man in a jester's hood leaps into the center, juggling torches. One slips, bounces off a bucket, and nearly hits a guard's helmet. The crowd roars with laughter as the guard pretends to chase him. Best aim in the city, someone shouts. You drift through the crowd, drawn toward the smell of roasted chestnuts. A woman hands you a small paper cone of them, the heat warming your hands. First one's free, she says with a wink. If you choke, that one's on you. You grin, popping one into your mouth and immediately burning your tongue. Worth it. As the afternoon stretches on, the festivities grow wilder. The square fills with musicians, flutes, drums, tambourines. Couples dance in circles, skirts swirling, boots thudding against stone. Children chase a wooden dragon on wheels, its painted eyes rolling comically. For the first time in months, no one's whispering about death. Then the parade begins. Not the proud, measured march of the guilds, but something altogether more chaotic. A procession of jesters, monks, and people in masks shaped like animals. A man dressed as St. Martin himself rides a horse through the crowd, tossing bits of bread to the children. Behind him, a group of women scatter flower petals, while someone beats a drum so loud it rattles the windows. The masks are everywhere. Wolves, foxes, pigs, even one poor soul wearing a wooden fish head that keeps slipping sideways. People shout blessings, throw confetti, and occasionally spill ale on strangers. You catch some on your sleeve, but no one seems to care. The smell of roasted meat thickens the air. At the edge of the square, a group of men turn a whole pig on a spit, fat dripping into the fire below. Someone passes you a mug of cider, sweet and sharp. "Drink to St. Martin," they cry. You do. It tastes like victory. For a while, it feels like the city's been reborn. The tension, the fear, it all melts under the heat of music and wine. Even the priests seem lighter tonight, blessing the crowd instead of scolding it. The air hums with relief and reckless joy. As evening falls, torches replace sunlight. The glow softens the faces around you, turns every movement golden. You find yourself sitting on the edge of the fountain, the baker's daughter beside you again. She offers you another honey cake. "Sweet things for sweeter days," she says. You take it, pretending to inspect it seriously. "Looks underbaked," you tease. "Your face looks underbaked," she fires back. You both laugh until the fiddler tune slows into something softer. Less celebration, more lullaby. For a moment, everything feels still. The smoke drifts lazily upward. The crowd's laughter turns gentle. Even the bells seem to ring more kindly. You can feel the city breathing again, tired but alive, scarred but whole. Nearby, a man raises his mug high. "To the living," he shouts. The crowd echoes it. "To the living." The sound rolls through the square, loud enough to shake the birds from the rooftops. You shout it too, your voice hoarse but strong. Historians still argue whether festivals after the plague were acts of gratitude or denial. Maybe both. But right now, no one cares about history. The only thing that matters is this: the shared warmth of bodies, the music still echoing through the air, and the simple miracle of still being here. As the night deepens, you make your way home, the world spinning just slightly from the cider. The streets glow with torchlight, laughter bouncing off the walls. You glance up at the stars, clear for once, unclouded by smoke or sorrow, and feel something you haven't in months: peace. When you finally crawl into bed, you can still hear the faint echoes of music outside. The city hums like a lullaby, its heartbeat steady once again. You fall asleep smiling, the taste of honey and smoke still lingering on your tongue. The next few days after the festival are softer, quieter, as if the city is exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The bells ring normally again, carts rattle over cobbles, and even the cats have resumed their usual dignified chaos. Life slides back into rhythm, but now that you've tasted celebration, the ordinary feels a bit too gray. That's when you notice her again, the baker's daughter. She's standing by her father's stall, flour dusting her hair like snow, smiling at something a customer said. You tell yourself you're just passing by, purely by coincidence, though your feet seem unusually loyal to this particular street. Back for more underbaked cakes. She teases the moment she sees you. You grin. "I was just checking if your cooking's improved." She folds her arms. "It hasn't, but you could try one anyway." She hands you a small pastry, warm and golden, its surface cracked like old parchment. You take a bite. Sweet, soft, slightly burnt on the bottom. "Perfect," you say with exaggerated sincerity. She laughs, shaking her head. "You're either the politest man in the city or the hungriest." You shrug. "Can't I be both?" Her father interrupts with a good-natured growl. "No flirting until you buy something, boy." You hand him a coin. He inspects it, bites it, then waves you off. "Fine, but don't distract her too much. She burns the bread when she smiles too long." You walk away with your pastry, but you can still feel her gaze follow you for a few seconds. There's a lightness in your chest that the day's work at the forge won't quite shake off. By noon, you're back at the workshop, the air thick with heat and noise. Gerard's in one of his moods. More sparks than sentences. Focus, he barks. You want a wife? Learn to make hinges that don't squeak. You nearly drop your hammer. How'd you? He smirks. You're not the first apprentice to come in smiling like a fool. Happens every spring. The city gets warm, and so do the hearts. You laugh it off, but his words stick. Love, or something shaped like it, feels dangerous here. Not the kind of danger that bites, but the slow kind that sneaks into your thoughts during long shifts at the forge. You catch yourself humming, half out of tune, and Gerard just groans. God help me, he's singing. The days stretch into weeks, each one blurring into the next. You keep finding excuses to walk past the bakery, returning a borrowed basket, delivering a horseshoe, once even pretending to lose your coin near her stall. She pretends not to notice, though the smirk she hides behind her hair gives you away every time. One evening, you finally work up the courage to speak to her properly. The market's closing, the sky fading from gold to gray. Do you ever get tired of baking? You ask, leaning against the stall. Only when the dough refuses to rise. She says, You, only when the iron refuses to bend. Sounds similar, she says, smiling. We both beat things into shape until they behave. You both laugh quietly. Around you, the city hums. Children chasing stray chickens. Merchants packing their goods. The faint toll of evening bells. There's comfort in it. Like background music for a conversation you hope never ends. But comfort doesn't last long in a place like this. The following week, word spreads of a new decree from the mayor. Apprentices are forbidden from courting until their contracts end. Distraction breeds mistakes, it says. Mistakes breed accidents, and accidents breed lawsuits. You stare at the parchment tacked to the square's post, feeling both disbelief and a very specific anger that only bureaucracy can inspire. Gerard sees you scowling at it and just snorts. Don't take it personally. They think love makes boys stupid. You fold your arms. Does it? He shrugs. Maybe, but it also makes them work faster. No one hammers like a man trying to impress someone. You laugh, though it's a hollow sound. Still, rules are rules, and the city has a long memory for those who break them. So for a while, you avoid the bakery, throwing yourself into work. The forge's rhythm fills your days. Heat, hammer, hiss. But at night, when the city quiets, you find yourself thinking about her laughter, her flour-dusted hair, the way her voice lifts at the end of a sentence. One evening, you're delivering a bundle of nails to a carpenter when you pass her street again. You tell yourself you're not going to stop, that you're just walking by. But then you see her, standing alone, watching the sunset over the rooftops. She spots you immediately and smiles. You've been avoiding me, she says softly. Trying to be good, you admit. How's that working out? You grin. Terribly. You talk for a long while, leaning against the bakery wall as the sky deepens into violet. She tells you about her dream to open her own stall one day. No father watching, no rules, just her own bread, her own name. You tell her about wanting to make something lasting. Iron gates, maybe, or a clock tower. Something that won't rust or crumble, you say. Something that stays. Maybe you will, she says. Maybe I'll sell bread beside it. The curfew bell rings, cutting through the quiet like a blade. You both hesitate. She takes a step back, her face half lit by the last traces of sunlight. Good night, blacksmith, she says. Good night, baker, you reply. You walk home quickly, heart pounding, smile impossible to hide. Your mother notices immediately. You look like you've been caught in the rain, she says. Worse, you reply. Caught in feelings. She laughs, shaking her head. Careful with those. They burn longer than coal. Historians still argue whether love in medieval cities was romance or strategy. Something practical for survival. Maybe it's both. But tonight, as you lie awake listening to the quiet creak of wooden beams and the distant murmur of the city outside, it feels simple. It's the sound of footsteps in familiar streets, the smell of bread in the morning, the echo of laughter that lingers longer than fear. And as you drift toward sleep, you realize something. For all the noise and grime and danger, this city, your city, has a heartbeat. And tonight, it's keeping perfect time with your own. Days keep rolling forward, and with them comes something you almost never admit out loud. You stink. Everyone stinks. The whole city smells like boiled cabbage, with smoke, tallow, mud, and whatever died in the gutter last week and is still negotiating its exit. You notice it most when the air is warm and still and you're standing too close to other people, which in a medieval city is always. Bathing, for you, is not a quick shower. Bathing is a mission that requires timing, money, and luck. There's a public bathhouse in town, a low, timbered building near the river, marked with a faded sign of a wooden tub and a sprig of herbs. You passed it plenty of times. You've heard the laughter spilling out. And now, for the first time, Gerard tosses you a coin and says, "Go." You smell like a donkey that lost a fight. You stare at him. "You're paying me to bathe?" "I'm paying everyone else not to suffer," he says deadpan. You nod. "Fair." You make your way to the bathhouse in the late afternoon, when work is done and the sky is soft and gray. The closer you get, the more the air changes. Under the usual river stink, mud, fish, things that used to be fish, you start to catch something else, steam and herbs. Rosemary, thyme, maybe lavender if the owner is feeling fancy. It smells clean. Not church clean, human clean. Inside, the heat hits you like you walked into a bread oven. The room is lit by candles and oil lamps, the air hazy with steam. Wooden tubs line the walls, some big enough for 2 or 3 people, some small enough for one lucky person to pretend they're important. People lounge in the water, red-faced and relaxed, voices bouncing off the damp plaster in low, contented murmurs. A woman at the front, hair tied back, sleeves rolled past her elbows, holds out her hand. "Halfpenny," she says. You give her Gerard's coin and get a nod of approval. "Water's hot today. You're lucky." You change behind a hanging cloth that does almost nothing to protect your dignity. Then you lower yourself into one of the wide tubs, and oh, the heat wraps around you instantly, soaking into your arms, shoulders, spine, all the places that have been screaming since you first picked up a hammer. Your blisters sting, but in a satisfying, you're still alive kind of way. You let out a sound that is not remotely elegant. The man across from you cracks one eye. "First time?" he asks. You nod, sinking deeper until the water kisses your chin. "How could you tell?" "Because you still look ashamed," he says. "Give it a minute." Shame boils off. You look around. He's not wrong. There's nothing fancy happening in here. No marble floors, no gold basins like in noble houses, but there's comfort. People are talking, joking, not watching their backs quite so hard. A pair of women trade gossip in the corner, heads bent close together. One says, "She swears the relic is real. Says it's St. Margaret's rib." The other snorts. "Looked exactly like a pig bone to me." You bite your lip to keep from laughing. That's another thing about bathhouses. They're not just for washing. They're for information. You hear things in here you won't hear in the square. Who's cheating who at the scales? Which guild master is paying off which watchman? whose daughter is maybe, possibly mysteriously promised to God, now that her stomach says otherwise. The bathhouse is a news station, a barber's chair, and a confession booth with better temperature. Historians still argue whether medieval people bathed often or barely at all. Some records brag about weekly baths. Others claim people avoided them for fear that hot water opened the pores and let sickness creep in. Tonight, though, all you know is this. Half the city seems to have shown up. So clearly fear of open pores isn't winning. A boy about your age wades into the pool next to you and hisses between his teeth as the heat hits his bruised knees. You recognize him after a second. Cooper's apprentice, barrel boy, always smells like wine-soaked oak. Rough day, you ask. They made me haul staves up 3 flights, he groans. 3 flights. He leans his head back against the side of the tub. I think my bones resigned. You grin. At least you smell better than usual. He snorts. Give me an hour. I'll fix that. At the far end of the room, a man works oil into another man's shoulders. Strong hands, practiced movements, massaging knots out of muscles. Loosens the humors. Someone nearby mutters approvingly. Can't have your humors stuck. You've heard that before. Hot, cold, wet, dry. The body's 4 moods. If they're balanced, you're healthy. If not, well, time to bleed you with leeches or hit you with mint leaves and prayer. Medicine here is equal parts philosophy, guesswork, and try not to die. You're not sure how much of it works, but your shoulders do feel looser, so you're not complaining. The steam makes everyone's hair curl and cling to their temples. The room hums softly. You feel yourself drifting. Not quite asleep, not quite awake. Just floating. You can't remember the last time you felt weightless. You live in a world of weight. Wood to haul, iron to lift, loyalty to carry. For a minute, you let it go. And then, from near the door, close it, close it. Don't let the draft in. You blink your eyes open. A man's just entered, wrapped in towels, muttering loudly. Drafts bring sickness, he declares. Everyone knows that. The bath master just rolls her eyes. Everyone knows you talk too much, Martin, she replies. The room chuckles. There's truth hiding in the joke. People really do think air can kill you. Bad air, foul vapors. Smell equals sickness. It's one reason the bathhouse burns herbs in little clay dishes, sage, thyme, sometimes even crushed rose petals if they can get them. Whether it works or not, historians still argue that too. But the steam smells like a garden instead of a tannery pit. And right now, that's a kind of miracle. Some bathhouses, so you've heard, offer more than hot water. You've heard the whispers, back rooms, candlelit, where bathing turns into other activities the priest definitely wouldn't bless. You've also heard that town councils pretend not to notice until they suddenly do. And then there are fines, sermons, and shouting about public morality, as if those same men weren't there last week after curfew. You look around, curious. This place doesn't seem like that kind of bathhouse, but you can't help wondering which ones are. You stay in the water until your fingertips wrinkle, until the heat stops stinging and starts melting the ache from your shoulders. After a while, that feeling of being almost human returns. You lean your head back, close your eyes, and let the sound of quiet voices wash over you. You only climb out when a bath master taps you on the shoulder. Out, she says kindly. If you fall asleep in there, I have to drag you out, and I'm not doing that again. You dry off with a rough linen cloth that smells faintly of smoke and mint. Your clothes feel worse than before, actually. That's the joke of bathing in the city. You step out of the tub glowing, steam-kissed, pores open, and then you put the same old tunic back on. You pull it over your head anyway. It's still damp from yesterday's work, but your skin's warm now, so it doesn't bite as hard. Outside, the night air snaps against your face, cool, damp, real. You breathe in and almost laugh. You've never noticed before just how aggressively the city smells. But there's another scent layered in now too, faint but there, rosemary, steam, and a little animal tallow soap. You, for the next hour, are technically clean. This is dangerous. If anyone notices, they'll expect this from you all the time. You start walking home, hair still damp, cheeks flush from the heat. Lanterns bob along the streets, throwing pools of gold on the cobbles. From a nearby window, you hear quiet singing. From somewhere deeper in the alley, drunk laughter. A dog trots past you with a bone twice its size and the smug energy of a king returning from conquest. You pass the bakery. The shutters are closed, but a thin line of light leaks out from one uneven seam. You pause. You knock just once. The door opens a crack. It's her. She squints at you for a heartbeat, then grins. Well, she whispers, you're either sick or you went to the bathhouse. You lean against the doorframe and smirk. I am now officially the cleanest person on this street. She leans in just a little. She says softly, you smell like rosemary and boiled iron. That's just my essence, you whisper back. She stifles a laugh, then lowers her voice even more. My father's asleep. Want to heal from the new loaf? She slips you a warm, crusty piece of bread wrapped in cloth. You take it, careful not to touch her hand longer than you should. For both your sakes. Get home, she murmurs. Before curfew. You nod. See you tomorrow? She tilts her head. Maybe. You walk the rest of the way with warm bread in your hands and heat still clinging to your skin. And for a moment, just a moment, the world feels almost gentle. And as you crawl under the blanket that night, listening to the rain tick softly against the shutters, you let yourself think something you don't say out loud. In a city where half the work is surviving and the other half is pretending you're fine, a stolen bath and warm bread at the door of someone who smiles when she sees you might be the closest thing to luxury you ever get. Morning creeps into the city like a thief, slow, gray, and far too early for your taste. You wake to the sound of hammering, not Gerard's rhythmic kind, but the sharp, echoing clang of carpenters at work somewhere near the square. Outside, voices rise and fall, wheels creak, and the air smells of wet straw and burning charcoal. The fog hasn't lifted from last night. It sits heavy over the rooftops, turning every sound into something distant and strange. You pull on your tunic, stretch sore arms, and head for the door, feeling the cold bite your skin the moment you step out. The city feels hushed, not peaceful, just waiting. Today isn't about work. Gerard's forge is closed for repairs after a cracked anvil foot nearly took off his toe. He swore loud enough to make the church bells blush and sent everyone home for 2 days. Which means, for once, you're free. You don't know what to do with freedom at first. It's like holding a coin you don't remember earning. But your feet, as usual, make the decision for you. They turn toward the city center, where sound means life, and life means stories. The square is already stirring despite the fog. Merchants are setting up, their carts creaking under the weight of goods. Fishmongers shout half-heartedly, their breath turning to steam in the cold air. Bakers wave away gulls. And in the middle of it all stands something new, a wooden stage being built plank by plank. You stop to watch. The carpenters work fast, hammering boards together with practiced ease. What's it for? You ask one, a man missing 2 fingers but none of his humor. Mystery play, he grunts. Priests are putting on the harrowing of hell. Again, you raise an eyebrow. Didn't they do that one last year? He shrugs. Hell always needs re-harrowing. You grin. Plays aren't common. Usually once or twice a year, when the church decides the people need a moral reminder wrapped in entertainment. But when they happen, the whole city shows up. And why not? For a population that spends most of its time sweating or starving, a good show, especially one with fake demons and loud noises, is worth dropping everything for. As you watch, a boy you know from the tanner's yard waves from the stage. "They need helpers," he shouts. "Runners and curtain holders. Want it?" You hesitate. You in a play? Then again, what else are you doing today? "All right," you say, climbing up the side like a rat on a barrel. The boards creak under your boots. The director, a rotund priest named Father Aldous, looks you up and down. "Can you carry things?" he asks. "I can lift a forge hammer," you reply. "Good," he says. "You'll be a demon." You blink. A demon. Don't look so offended. We need more sinners. The audience loves them. And that's how you find yourself, an hour later, sitting behind the stage in a pile of props, a wooden pitchfork, a tattered cloak, and a mask that smells faintly of onions and regret. The script, as Father Aldous explains, is simple. Jesus descends into hell, frees the souls of the righteous, and the demons lose spectacularly. Your role? To shout "no" and fall down convincingly. You practice your fall 3 times before you realize the ground is harder than it looks. By midday, the square is packed. Men, women, children. Everyone's gathered, crowding the stage, their breath fogging in the chill. The bells ring once more, and Father Aldous steps forward, arms wide. "Good people of our city," he booms. "Today we tell a tale of salvation, of sin, and of the great mercy of heaven." Someone in the crowd mutters, "Hope heaven's got better seating." The play begins. Angels in painted wings enter first, their halos fashioned from bent metal wire. The audience gasps, half from awe, half from the brightness of the reflection when sunlight hits the tin. Then come the demons, you included. You stomp out from behind the curtain, mask crooked, cloak flapping. The children cheer. Someone throws a turnip. You're not sure if that's enthusiasm or critique. "Whoa, whoa," cries the lead demon beside you, waving his pitchfork dramatically. "The Son of God descends." "No," you yell slightly off cue. The crowd erupts in laughter. You feel your ears burn, but you can't help smiling under the mask. The play goes on, shouting, singing, wooden swords clashing. Someone lights a bundle of straw to represent hellfire, and the smoke immediately blinds half the cast. Father Aldous keeps shouting from offstage. More passion, less coughing. Finally, the heavenly host triumphs. The demons collapse in an exaggerated heap, yourself included. The crowd cheers, clapping and stamping their feet. For a moment, you forget you're covered in soot and lying face down on cold wood. You grin into the floorboards because this chaos is joy. Afterward, the priest hands you a hunk of bread and pats your shoulder. "Well done, boy. You make an excellent embodiment of evil." "Thank you, Father," you say. "I'll add it to my resume." He stares blankly. You add, thank you again." You linger as the crowd disperses. A group of children reenact the play in miniature, whacking each other with sticks. A woman wipes tears of laughter from her eyes. Even the market vendors seem happier, their voices lighter, their prices slightly less outrageous. You find yourself sitting at the edge of the fountain, still holding your demon mask. Its paint is chipped, its nose half broken, but there's something oddly charming about it. You turn it over in your hands, thinking about how even in the dirtiest corners of life, people here keep finding ways to laugh. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly found joy in the midst of hardship or simply pretended until they believed it. Watching the city now, you think maybe it doesn't matter. Pretending is believing if you do it long enough. As the sun sets, the stage comes apart piece by piece. You help the carpenters pack the boards, trading jokes and splinters. One of them nods at you. You've got a good voice for shouting. Ever think of joining the guild of players? You laugh. I think I'll stick to hammering iron. He grins. Suit yourself. But you'd make a fine fool. You take it as a compliment. On your way home, the fog's finally lifting. The city glows gold in the last light. The rooftops slick with dew. You pass the bakery, closed, but the smell of warm bread still lingers. You think of the laughter, the crowd, the ridiculous mask tucked under your arm. And for once, the city doesn't feel heavy or cruel. It feels alive, like it's trying, just like you, to shake off the soot and start fresh. You reach home tired, dirty, and smiling. Your mother glances at the mask and raises an eyebrow. What's that? Elle, you say simply, but funny. She laughs, the sound small and soft, like a bell under her breath. Then maybe it's not hell at all. You hang the mask by your bed before lying down. Its painted grin watches over you as you drift off, the echoes of laughter still floating through your mind. The week after the play, the city doesn't quiet down, it shifts gears. The laughter fades into chatter, and the chatter becomes the steady hum of work again. You feel it everywhere. The clang of hammers, the clatter of carts, the drip of water through cracked gutters. Life keeps pushing forward, but beneath the usual rhythm, something new stirs in the streets. A whisper of trade, of visitors, of opportunity. By the second morning, it isn't just rumor. A caravan's coming. The merchants from the south have returned. Long lines of wagons creaking under bolts of silk, bags of salt, jars of honey, and bundles of spices worth more than most people's homes. They've traveled for months through forests, mountains, and God knows how many bandit-infested roads. And now they're here, rolling through the gates like a moving miracle. You're in the square when the first wagon arrives. The crowd parts in awe as oxen, dust-caked and lumbering, drag their load across the cobbles. Behind them walk men in strange clothes, turbans, patterned robes, belts lined with silver. One of them has skin darker than anyone you've ever seen, and the children stare with open curiosity. Another carries a lute that looks like it's been carved for moonlight. The air changes with them. You can smell the difference: cinnamon, cloves, resin, a sweetness that doesn't belong to this damp northern air. People lean closer, eyes wide, breath shallow. The merchant leader, a sharp-eyed man with a gold tooth, raises his hands. Friends, he calls, his accent thick but melodic. We bring the world to your doorstep. Someone shouts back, how much for the world? The man grins. Depends how much coin you have. Laughter ripples through the crowd. Soon the square transforms into something between a carnival and a battlefield. Traders set up makeshift stalls. Colorful cloths spread over barrels and crates, bowls glittering with trinkets, baskets overflowing with strange fruits. You see oranges for the first time in your life, round, glowing, and absurdly bright against the gray city stone. A man slices one open, and the scent hits you like sunlight itself. You taste a piece when he offers a sample. It's sharp, sweet, alive. You've never tasted anything so foreign and so perfect. Nearby, a woman displays beads made of glass, blue, green, amber, catching the light like water droplets. She tells anyone who'll listen that they're from Venice, though no one here really knows where that is. She names a price that would feed a family for a week. Still, 3 women are already arguing over them. You pass a table covered in bolts of fabric, silk so smooth it looks like it's breathing. You reach out to touch it, but the merchant snaps his fingers. Ah, no touching unless you buy, he warns playfully. You pull your hand back, grinning. Sorry, you say. It looks soft. He winks. That's why it's expensive. Gerard arrives not long after, grumbling but curious. Fools and their coins, he mutters, though you catch him sniffing a jar of frankincense like it might fix his bad knee. What's this? He asks the merchant. Perfume for priests. The man chuckles. Perfume for everyone, especially those who work with fire. Gerard snorts, but buys a pinch anyway. As you wander deeper into the crowd, the noise swells. Languages you don't understand mixing with familiar curses and laughter. A musician strums a strange stringed instrument and sings in a tongue that sounds like poetry, even though you can't follow a word. Children dance around him, clapping out of rhythm, faces glowing with delight. You stop at a booth where a young man is selling small objects carved from bone. Tiny animals, saints, and one particularly odd little figure of a man holding a cup. Luck charm, the vendor says. Keeps sickness away. You raise an eyebrow. Does it work? He grins. You'll have to live long enough to find out. You buy it anyway. Historians still argue whether medieval trade was truly global or just a few adventurous routes stitched together by rumor. But standing here, with silk brushing your fingertips and cinnamon tickling your nose, you don't need debate. The world feels enormous. And yet, somehow, right at your feet, then the jugglers appear. They're part of the caravan too, dressed in bright reds and golds, moving with impossible grace. One juggles knives. Another balances on a wooden beam while playing a flute. The crowd roars approval. Even the watchmen stop, pretending not to enjoy it. At one point, a magician steps forward with a covered bowl. He murmurs something, lifts the cloth, and, impossibly, a small white dove bursts upward, circling above the crowd before vanishing into the mist. Gasps turn to cheers. You laugh out loud, unable to stop yourself. The magician catches your eye, bows slightly, and says, "Every city needs a little wonder." By late afternoon, the air is thick with sound and scent and life. You help Gerard carry a sack of coal to one of the merchants, who trades it for a small bag of black powder. Gunpowder, he whispers, as if saying something dangerous. New from the east, makes thunder from fire. Gerard raises an eyebrow. Sounds like something the mayor should never touch. You agree. As the sun dips low, the caravanners light oil lamps that hang from their wagons, their soft glow turning the mist into golden haze. The city feels almost dreamlike, half real, half painted. That's when you hear the music change. A slow drumbeat, deep and steady. The crowd quiets as a man steps forward carrying a strange curved horn. He plays a single long note, low, haunting, beautiful. The sound fills the square, vibrating in your ribs. It's not a song you know. It's older, maybe from lands where the stars look different. The people around you fall still. Even the watchmen forget to pretend they're busy. When the song ends, the silence is almost reverent. Then applause, loud and grateful. The merchant bows deeply. For the road, he says simply, and you realize something you've never felt before, that the world outside your city isn't just a story told by travelers in alehouses. It's real, vast, dangerous, shimmering with life. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for you someday. As the crowd disperses, you walk home through the glowing streets, the scent of cinnamon still clinging to your sleeves. You pass the bakery, where the girl's standing in the doorway, watching the last of the wagons vanish into the dusk. "Smells better than usual today," she says. You grin. "That's the world," you reply, "passing through." She tilts her head, smiling softly. "Maybe it'll take us with it someday." You glance back at the fading caravan lights, then at the familiar narrow lanes around you. Maybe, you say, but I think I'd miss the bread. You both laugh quietly as the first evening bell tolls, and the world, once again, folds itself neatly into night. The caravan is gone by morning. The square looks oddly naked without its colors, just mud, stray feathers, and a few broken crates left behind. The air smells normal again, with smoke, dung, bread, and river rot. But something in you feels different, as if those wagons took part of your curiosity with them when they rolled out through the gate. The forge is already roaring when you arrive. Gerard's back to his usual rhythm, hammering like he's personally offended by metal. Daydreams don't earn dinner, he says without looking up. You mumble something about travel, about wanting to see the world beyond these walls. He snorts. The world. Clang. The world stinks the same everywhere. You're not sure he's wrong, but you're also not sure he's right. That afternoon, you're sent to deliver a batch of nails to the docks, the part of the city that always feels a little wild, a little off balance, like it hasn't quite decided whether it belongs to the water or the land. The air grows salter as you go, thick with seaweed, tar, and the faint sweetness of rotting fish. You can hear gulls before you see them, screaming over the waves like arguments that never end. And then there they are, the ships. Dozens of them, their masts spearing the sky, their sails rolled tight like sleeping giants. The harbor's alive with movement, sailors shouting, ropes creaking, barrels rolling, and water slapping against hulls. You've never been this close before. The size of it all steals your breath. A man in a faded blue coat nearly crashes into you carrying a coil of rope. "Watch it, lad," he growls, then softens when he sees your awe. "First time." You nod dumbly. He grins. "Don't stare too long. The sea's a jealous mistress. She'll take you if you look like you're thinking too hard." You follow him onto the pier, balancing carefully on the slick boards. Each plank groans under your boots, the smell of salt heavy in the air. Men shout orders in half a dozen accents. Someone's singing, a rough, rhythmic chant that rises and falls with the motion of the waves. You stop at the far end where a ship larger than the rest is being loaded. Its hull is dark oak, carved with curling patterns along the prow. Painted letters you can barely read spell its name. The St. Bridget. Crates are being hoisted aboard by pulley, the ropes creaking under strain. A cat lounges nearby, watching the chaos with total disdain. A sailor with a scar across his nose catches your stare. "Ever been on one?" he asks, jerking a thumb toward the ship. You shake your head. "I've never left the city." He laughs. "Then you've never seen anything at all. Out there." He gestures toward the endless gray expanse beyond the docks. That's where the world starts. You look where he points. The sea stretches forever, melting into mist. It looks both beautiful and terrifying, like freedom dressed in danger. The sailor tosses you an apple from a crate. "Keep that. For luck. You'll need it if you ever set sail." You catch it awkwardly, grinning. "Thanks." He nods, already turning away to shout at a crewmate. You linger for a while, watching the ropes tighten, sails unfurl, gulls dive. Every movement feels like music, loud, crude, alive. You can almost picture yourself on deck, wind whipping through your hair, the city shrinking behind you. But then you hear the church bells in the distance, calling everyone back to the world they actually live in, not the one they imagine. You sigh, tucking the apple into your pouch, and head back up the hill. The road takes you through the fish market, where the smell is strong enough to make you question your faith in humanity. Women gut eels with frightening speed, tossing the heads into buckets. A man waves a crab at you like it's a sword. "Fresh," he shouts. You believe him, but keep walking. You pass the tavern by the water, where sailors crowd the doorway, drinking and shouting songs that would make priests faint. One of them is arm wrestling a man twice his size and winning. Coins clatter, laughter booms. For a moment, you almost step inside. Then you remember the coin Gerard gave you barely covers dinner, and you keep walking. By the time you reach the upper streets again, your head's still full of ocean sounds. The forge feels quieter than usual. The fires roar almost gentle compared to the sea's endless pulse. Gerard glances at you as you set the nails down. You get lost. No, you say, though part of you knows you did. That night, you sit outside your door, watching fog roll through the alley like ghostly cloth. You take out the apple and turn it in your hands. It's slightly bruised, but still perfect, red, shining, a little piece of the docks you're not ready to eat yet. Your mother joins you after a while, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. You were gone long, she says. The forge keeping you late again. You shake your head. The docks. I saw ships. Ah, she says, a smile curling faintly. Every young man thinks he'll sail away someday. Maybe I will. Maybe, she says softly. But don't forget, the sea gives and the sea takes. She's kind only until she's hungry. You glance at her, the way her eyes catch the lantern light. Did you ever want to leave? She laughs quietly. Leave? I did once. Then I met your father, and the city stopped feeling so small. You both fall silent, listening to the distant clang of the harbor bells. Somewhere out there, ships are already moving, cutting through the dark water, carrying spices, stories, and people you'll never meet. Historians still argue whether most medieval folk ever truly dreamed of travel, or if the sea was simply too terrifying to imagine. You think about that sailor's grin, the sound of ropes tightening, the apple's weight in your hand. Maybe it isn't fear that keeps people here. Maybe it's the stubborn hope that the world will eventually come to them. You bite into the apple finally, the taste crisp and sharp. It tastes like salt and sky and possibility. You smile, watching the fog swallow the streets once more. And for the first time, the city doesn't feel like the whole world. It feels like the beginning of one. The sound of rain wakes you before dawn, soft at first, then relentless, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. You pull the blanket over your head, but the leaks have other plans. Cold drops hit your forehead in rhythm. You sigh, sit up, and watch the gray light seep through the shutter cracks. The city outside is drenched, dripping, and half asleep. Rain in a medieval city isn't the cleansing kind. It's the kind that turns streets into rivers and alleys into traps. The smell doubles in strength. Mud, manure, fish guts, and smoke. Everything becomes a wet, slippery test of faith. You step outside anyway, because no one here gets to take a rain day. The square's quieter, the stalls covered with sagging canvas. Merchants shout under umbrellas of patched leather, their voices fighting the downpour. You trudge through ankle-deep puddles toward the forge, where the rain hisses against the roof like an argument with the fire itself. Gerard's already there, bare arms glistening with sweat and rainwater. Late, he grunts, though you're not. Fire's dying. Pump the bellows. You work in silence, the forge glowing brighter as the rain outside grows louder. Water trickles down the walls in thin lines. Every few minutes, Gerard curses the weather and the roof, and maybe God for good measure. By midday, the storm still hasn't broken. Lightning flashes through the open doorway, turning the cobblestones silver for an instant. Thunder follows so closely it shakes the tools on the wall. You grin despite yourself. Sounds like the sky's forging something. Gerard raises an eyebrow. If heaven's a smithy, it's run by fools. The next strike of thunder proves his point. It knocks loose one of the roof beams. You both leap back as it crashes to the ground, sending sparks across the floor. Out! Gerard bellows, coughing through the smoke. You grab the water bucket and douse the flames before they spread. The rain does the rest. Outside, people are gathered under doorways, pointing toward the river. You follow their gaze and see it, swollen, dark, and angry, its current tearing at the stone bridge like claws. The lower streets are already flooding. A cart floats by, upside down, as if mocking its own owner. You push through the crowd to help a man trying to pull his goods out of the rising water. He's shouting for help, his barrels drifting toward the current. You grab one, the cold biting into your arms. Together you wrestle it to higher ground. "Bless you, boy," he gasps. "That one's full of ale." "Then we save something holy," you say, grinning. Nearby, others are less lucky. A woman cries as her laundry drifts away. Children chase a floating chicken with reckless joy. A dog swims past with half a loaf of bread in its jaws, a thief in fur. Historians still argue how well medieval cities handled flooding. The truth, from where you stand, is terribly. Drains clog, bridges groan, and the river takes whatever it wants. By late afternoon, the downpour turns the entire lower market into a shallow lake. People wade through knee-deep water, carrying baskets on their heads. The blacksmith's forge is closed for the day. The floor is too soaked to hold fire, and Gerard finally waves you off. Go home before the water does. You take the long way back, partly out of curiosity, partly because the usual alleys look more like canals now. You pass the tanneries, where hides float in brown water like ghostly sheets. The stench is unbelievable. You gag, covering your nose. A tanner nearby laughs. "Smells like profit," he calls. You wave weakly, unsure how anyone survives that scent. Further up, the church bells toll again. Not for death this time, but warning. "Stay indoors," someone shouts. "The bridge might give." You climb higher, to the main road where the rich houses sit safely above the flood. Water glints below like a mirror of misery. A carriage passes, its wheels splashing mud onto a beggar who doesn't even flinch. The difference between high ground and low has never felt more literal. At the bakery, the shutters are closed tight, but you see movement inside. You knock, and after a moment the door opens just a crack. She's there, the baker's daughter, hair tied back, flowers streaked across her cheek. "You're soaked," she says. "So's the world," you reply. She laughs softly and pulls you inside. The air smells like heaven. Warm bread, yeast, cinnamon. Steam fogs the tiny windows. "We're baking through the storm," she explains. "People need food when they can't work." You help where you can, stacking trays, carrying logs, anything to stay out of her father's way. The oven roars, its fire defying the weather outside. "This smells better than the forge," you say. She grins. Everything smells better than the forge. At one point, the thunder shakes the building again. She flinches, and without thinking, you steady her by the elbow. For a moment, the world shrinks to that small, warm space between you, full of firelight and rain. Then she steps back, smiling shyly. "You should get home before curfew," she says, "and before my father sees you holding dough instead of iron." You nod, reluctant but obedient. She slips you a small loaf, still warm, wrapped in cloth. "For the road," she says. Outside, the rain's finally slowing. The streets shine under the last light of evening, puddles reflecting lanterns like tiny golden lakes. You walk carefully, bread tucked under your arm, watching how the city seems to breathe again, drained, battered, but alive. When you reach home, your mother's waiting with a candle and a worried look. "You're drenched," she says, pulling you inside. "And what's this?" "Bread," you say. "A gift." She smiles faintly. "The best kind." You eat by the fire, the loaf crisp and soft all at once. The storm fading into steady drips outside. Your siblings sleep in a huddle, faces peaceful. You lie back, listening to the roof groan and the water drip into a bucket by your bed. The smell of wet earth fills the room. Historians will one day call this century dark. Disease, famine, flood. But they'll forget these small moments. A stranger's hand on a barrel. Laughter over soaked boots. The way a city holds its breath and still manages to keep its heart beating. You close your eyes, exhausted but warm. Somewhere far off, the river sighs as if it, too, is finally tired of fighting. And in the hush that follows, you swear you can hear the faint crackle of the baker's oven still burning. Proof that even through the storm, the city finds a way to glow. When the rain finally stops, the city wakes up looking as though it's been reborn, and mildly hungover. The air is clean but heavy, carrying that strange, metallic scent that only follows long storms. Puddles glint between cobblestones, reflecting strips of morning light. The gutters still gurgle. People walk cautiously, testing the earth beneath their boots, as if the ground might remember the water and swallow them again. You stretch, step outside, and breathe in the quiet aftermath. It doesn't last long. Somewhere down the lane, a rooster screams, followed by the hollow echo of a broom hitting a wall. The city, stubborn as ever, is already scrubbing itself back to life. But something feels different today. Not in the sky, not in the air, in you. There's a strange restlessness under your skin, a feeling that something unseen is about to happen. The calm before the next chaos. You make your way through the damp streets toward the forge. The cobblestones are slick, the air cool. The sound of hammering echoes faintly from far away. Someone else's forge waking before yours. Gerard still mending yesterday's flood damage when you arrive, muttering curses that sound older than the city itself. "Good," he says without looking up. "You're alive. Grab the tongs." The day passes in slow, smoky rhythm. You pump the bellows, shape nails, patch a gate hinge. Sweat mixes with soot until you can't tell which is which. But the unease doesn't leave you. Every so often you glance toward the doorway, half expecting something, or someone, to appear. By late afternoon, the shadows grow longer, sharper. The city begins to change its mood again. Shops close their shutters. The taverns light their lanterns. And the watchmen start patrolling in pairs, their chainmail whispering in the dusk. Something's brewing, Gerard says, noticing your glance. The mayor posted new curfew orders. No one out after bells tonight. You frown. Why? He shrugs. Because fear makes men feel important. He's right, of course. The city's been tense for weeks now. Rumors of theft, of spies, of strange symbols painted on doors. Last night, someone said they saw figures in hoods gathering by the cemetery. Others claim it was just monks out too late. No one knows for sure, and no one wants to. When the last hammer falls and the forge quiets, Gerard wipes his brow and nods toward the street. Go home. Keep your lantern low. You do. The night feels heavier than usual. Thick, close, listening. The moon's hidden behind clouds, and the only light comes from the scattered torches of the watch. Their glow flickers against walls like ghosts too restless to rest. You take the back streets, your footsteps muffled on wet stone. Somewhere nearby, a door slams. Then silence. A cat hisses from a windowsill. The city's alive, but quietly, like a beast pretending to sleep. You pass the churchyard. where the fog has pooled low among the gravestones. The air smells faintly of wax and damp earth. A candle burns before a statue of Saint Michael, its flame trembling. You pause to light your own lantern from it, whispering a quiet thanks. Then you hear it. Footsteps. Not the solid stomp of a watchman, but the softer rhythm of someone trying not to be heard. You freeze, heart thudding. The sound draws closer, then stops. Who's there? You whisper. No answer. The fog stirs, and then, out of it, steps a figure in a dark hooded cloak. You recognize the walk before the face, cautious but certain. It's me, she says softly, lowering the hood. The baker's daughter. Her hair's tucked under a scarf, her cheeks pale in the torchlight. You shouldn't be out, you say, relief mixing with surprise. Neither should you, she counters. She's holding something, a small bundle wrapped in linen. Delivering bread, she explains, to the monastery. They've taken in orphans since the flood. Now, you ask. She shrugs. The monks said they'd be gone by morning. I promised I'd bring it before then. You sigh. At least let me walk you. She hesitates, then nods. All right, but keep quiet. The watch doesn't like charity this late. You move together through the narrow alleys, your lantern dimmed to a faint glow. The city looks different at night. Familiar shapes turn strange. Shadows stretch and twist. The wooden beams above creak like tire bones. Somewhere in the distance, laughter erupts from a tavern and dies just as suddenly. Do you ever get scared? You whisper after a while. She thinks before answering. Of what? Of this. You gesture at everything. The dark streets, the whispers, the way the city always seems one bad day away from falling apart. She smiles faintly. I think being scared just means you're still paying attention. You don't realize how close you've walked until your shoulders brush. Neither of you steps away. The monastery finally comes into view, its stone walls slick with rain, its windows glowing faintly with candlelight. She knocks softly on the side door. A monk answers, nodding in silent thanks as he takes the bundle. As he closes the door, he murmurs, God keep you both safe. The streets are dangerous tonight. You exchange glances. More than usual? She asks. The monk pauses. There's talk of thieves, he says quietly, and other things. Things that move without feet. Best not to linger. You thank him and turn back toward the city. The air feels heavier now. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. Halfway home, you notice something odd. The street you're walking, one you've taken 100 times, feels wrong. The corners don't line up the same way. The buildings seem taller, leaning inward. Did they always? You begin, then stop. Because there's a sound behind you. Soft. Wet. Like footsteps, but not quite. You turn, raising the lantern. Nothing. Just fog curling around the stones. You laugh nervously. Must be rats, you say. Big ones, she mutters, clutching her cloak tighter. You quicken your pace. The city watches. You can feel it. The walls, the windows, the narrow mouths of the alleys. The way every flicker of torchlight seems to blink. You've walked these streets since you were a child, but tonight they feel alive in a way that doesn't care about you at all. Historians still argue how much medieval people truly believed in the supernatural. Ghosts, demons, spirits of the unburied. But when you walk through fog like this, with your breath frosting and your heart hammering, belief doesn't matter. The fear is real enough on its own. Finally, your street appears, familiar, small, blessedly normal. You both stop in front of her bakery. You'll get home safe? She asks. You nod. I'm already there. You smile, though it feels fragile. See you in the morning? She hesitates, then nods. If the sun still remembers us. You laugh softly, though something about the way she says it lingers like the fog itself. You walk the rest of the way home alone. The city's quiet now. Too quiet. You close the door behind you, set the lantern down, and listen to the rain dripping from the eaves. When you finally lie down, it takes a long time to fall asleep. Every creak, every sigh of wind sounds like a footstep just beyond the wall. And somewhere between waking and dreaming, you think you hear a whisper, not outside, but deep within the city itself. A reminder that it never truly sleeps. Morning breaks not with bells this time, but with silence. The kind of silence that feels earned, like the city's finally run out of noise for once. You wake to light slipping through the shutters in soft gold ribbons. The storm is gone. The air smells of clean stone and ash. You step outside, stretching your sore shoulders, and for a moment you just stand there. The streets glisten from last night's rain. A few puddles cling stubbornly to the cobbles, reflecting bits of sky. Somewhere a dog barks. A baker's bell rings in the distance, steady, hopeful. Life goes on. Your boots squelch slightly as you walk toward the forge. The city looks smaller today, or maybe you just look at it differently. The same narrow alleys, the same leaning houses, but they feel softer, as if the city itself has exhaled. Gerard's already at work when you arrive, but he's slower now, more deliberate. "Morning," he says, and for once, it's not barked like a command. You nod. "Morning." You fall into rhythm easily. Hammer, heat, cool. The cycle feels eternal, comforting. It's not exciting, but solid. Every strike on the anvil is a heartbeat. Every hiss of steam is breath. The city outside might riot or flood or burn, but here, the world still makes sense. At noon, you step out for air. Children play in the square again, splashing in leftover puddles. The smell of baking drift down the street. Warm, yeasty, alive. You wander toward it, drawn like a moth to memory. The bakery's open. She's there, wiping flour off her hands, hair tied up loosely. When she sees you, her smile is small but real. "You survived curfew," she says. "Barely," you reply. "The city tried to eat me again." She laughs quietly. That's what it does, but it always spits you back out. You buy a small loaf, still warm, crisp crust, golden brown, and tear it in half. You hand her one piece. "For last night," you say. She hesitates, then takes it. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," you say. "That's why it's a real gift." You eat together on the doorstep, sharing silence and crumbs. Around you, the city hums. Horses clop by, vendors shout. The church bell tolls once for midday. "You ever think about leaving?" you ask finally. She glances toward the rooftops. "Sometimes." Then I look around and realize this city may be loud and filthy and cruel, but it's ours. It's home. You nod. The thought settles somewhere deep. Maybe home isn't where you're born. Maybe it's where you learn to survive, and where someone remembers your name. As the afternoon sun warms the stones, you realize something else too. You've grown up. Not the way people notice. No grand announcement. No ceremony. Just slowly, between storms and laughter and long days of hammering. You've grown into someone who knows this city's rhythm. Someone who belongs to it, even as you sometimes dream of escaping it. Historians still argue whether medieval childhoods ever truly existed, whether kids became adults too soon, or if play somehow survived amid the struggle. But standing here, bread in your hands, laughter in your chest, you know it's both. You've seen death and joy live side by side. You've danced between them your whole life. As evening approaches, the sun dips low, painting the rooftops in copper and fire. You walk home slowly, savoring each sight, The crooked chimneys, the laundry flapping like tired flags, the faces of people you passed 100 times but only now really see. Your mother's outside, mending a shirt. She looks up, smiles faintly. You're late. I was saying goodbye. You say, to who? To the city. You answer, just for tonight. She chuckles. The city never says goodnight back, but it lets you rest if you've earned it. You sit beside her until the light fades. The last bell of the day tolls, slow, deep, steady. Somewhere, the baker's shutters close. The smell of smoke and bread drifts through the air. The same old scent that's carried you through your whole life. And then, quietly, the world softens. The noises fade one by one. The hammering, the shouting, even the dogs. What's left is the heartbeat of the city itself, steady under the hush of night. You stretch out on your bed, the blanket rough but warm. You think about everything you've seen, the markets, the festivals, the plagues, the floods, the laughter. You think about the people, their tired faces, their jokes, their stubborn to keep waking up every morning. The city has raised you like a strict, unpredictable parent, shouting 1 minute, feeding you the next. It's bruised you, starved you, scared you half to death. But it's also taught you how to endure, how to laugh when you shouldn't, how to keep going when there's no reason left except that you can. You close your eyes, listening to the faint hum of rain returning somewhere far off, like a lullaby you've heard all your life. And you realize this is what it was like to grow up in a medieval city. Not heroic, not easy, just alive. You smile faintly. Tomorrow, the bells will ring again. They always do. The streets are quiet now. The fires have burned low, and the hum of the city has thinned into a soft, sleepy whisper. The same stones that echoed footsteps all day now cradle silence like a secret. You can almost hear the sigh of the city settling under its own weight, content just to exist for another night. In the distance, the church bells toll one last time. Their sound softer now, melting into the cool air. You picture the baker covering her loaves, the blacksmith setting down his hammer, the children curling up beside their parents on straw beds. Every window glows faintly, like stars scattered low to the ground. The smell of smoke lingers, faint, comforting. Somewhere, a cat leaps from roof to roof, the faintest rustle of life in the dark. A guard's lantern drifts past, its light wobbling like a dream that refuses to end. You breathe in, slow and deep. You can still taste the bread from dinner, still feel the rough edge of the blanket against your hands. The air is cool, clean, alive with the faint rhythm of the world winding down. If you listen carefully, beneath the heartbeat of the city, you can hear your own, steady, quiet, patient. It matches the rhythm of the rain starting again beyond your window, soft enough to lull even the restless into sleep. You let your thoughts fade, one by one, names, places, sounds, all of them dissolving into stillness. Tomorrow, the city will wake again, noisy and stubborn and full of life. But for now, it's at peace. You're at peace. The rain whispers against the rooftops, and you drift, slowly, gently, into the dark.